Happy Tuesday. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Again, thank you for joining us. It is Tuesday. It's the beginning of the week, and we're almost there, guys. I promise. It seems so far away, but I promise you, we're almost there. We're almost there. I'm joined here by super producer Carlene Bragg.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing well. It is a beautiful day outside. We'll get to the weather in a minute. I'll gripe about how warm it is outside and and all that stuff. But we have a busy day for you. And again, on Live Impact News, look, I always say this, we always have a busy day, but anytime we have breaking news, developing stories, we bring it to you live here as it comes in. Sometimes I am reading it in real time. And sadly, this is the case for this story that we just got in moments before we came on the stream. And so let me lay it out for you. This is a story out in Caldwell County. A 16-month-old dies at a local daycare. So we just got this press release in from officials there in Caldwell County. So on Monday, May 19th, which is yesterday, at 2:43 p.m., officers from the Lenoir Police Department, along with personnel from the Lenoir Fire Department and Caldwell County EMS, responded to a report of an infant in cardiac arrest at Creative Beginnings of Lenoir, located on Morganton Boulevard. Here's a map to show you just exactly where this is. So upon arrival, first responders located a 16-month-old child unresponsive. CPR and other life-saving measures were immediately initiated. The child was transported to Caldwell UNC Healthcare, where resuscitation efforts continued. Despite the efforts of EMS and hospital staff, the child was pronounced deceased shortly after arrival. Now, the Lenoir Police Department's Criminal Investigations Division responded to the scene and has launched an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the child's death. Again, you are looking at a map of where this took place, where they found the child. This investigation remains in its early stages, and it is ongoing. And investigators are working closely with the North Carolina Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to determine the exact cause of death. Creative Beginnings has been fully cooperative throughout this investigation, and due to the sensitive nature of this case, no further details have been released at the time, but Lenoir Police Department did add that they extend its deepest condolences to the child's family and to all of those impacted and affected by this tragic loss. Such a tragic story here. Again, a 16-month-old dies at a local daycare. And this is a map of where it is in Lenoir. Again, Creative Beginnings of Lenoir, located on Morganton Boulevard. Again, first responders located a 16-month-old child, unresponsive, tried CPR efforts. And despite those efforts, that child was pronounced dead. Again, this is a developing story. We actually have a crew headed there to Caldwell County, Lenoir, to figure out exactly some of those additional details that we're working to find out. So as soon as we get more information on this story, we'll make sure to pass this along to you. So make sure you have Live Impact News up, WCNC Plus up. Make sure you have our app, WCNC Charlotte mobile app. Make sure you're tuning in, stay plugged in, because that's where you will get these new details, again, as more information comes in. All right, so we want to shift gears now. Let's talk about weather, because we are weather alert overnight. And again, I'm going to gripe about it being warm. It's what it is. It's what I do. I complain about the weather. But here's a nice shot. I really feel like, I was about to ask you, Carlene, was this video from yesterday? Because it looks like it never changes here. I've only seen it rain and look like this here at the ballpark. This is Caramount Health Park. This is where the Ghost Peppers play.
They have a double header today.
They have a double look.
It's gonna be a long day at the ballpark.
It's gonna be a long, warm day at the ballpark. Beautiful day so far. It's warm. Look, we're not even in June yet, and I'm already complaining. I'm sweating. You might think I'm glowing. It's actually sweat. That's Becca Bursall, meteorologist Becca Bursall. I guess it's too early for me to complain, right?
It is too early for you to complain. In fact, you should enjoy this weather.
Okay.
Soak it up before we really turn up the heat, especially turning more into the summer months. But we are still in spring, and of course we do still have those springtime storms, and we have that set up for today that is very similar to what we saw over Saturday. Saturday morning, if you were paying attention, around 5, 6, 7 o'clock, we had some pretty strong to severe thunderstorms in and around the area. A couple of severe thunderstorm warnings that encompassed about quarter-size hail, which is 1 inch in diameter, as well as 60-mile-per-hour winds. That's going to be the same system that's going to be headed in our direction as well, especially with it being overnight. So we do want you to be weather alert, especially after midnight tonight, all the way through about 6 o'clock. Main concerns with that is going to be heavy rainfall, damaging wind gusts, and also some small-sized hail as well. This is the same system that is right now bringing some pretty strong storms and heavy rainfall from Kentucky all the way up towards middle Tennessee, down over towards the southeast, and this will only continue to be pushed by an approaching cold front. Now, what's happening in our department for today, especially during the daytime hours, a warm front is going to be trying to lift, so that's going to allow for temperatures to warm up into the 80s and also increase our dew points, meaning the lower humidity that we had from Sunday and basically yesterday, that's going to start to creep up as well. So the feels like temperature will likely be several degrees warmer than the actual temperature and provide a little bit of fuel for those storms to come through as this cold front continues to work its way off to the east. An isolated shower or thunderstorm will be possible through the daytime hours. This is not the main round. This is not the main system that we're expecting later on tonight. Again, temperatures rising up mainly into the lower to middle 80s for the high temperature, but if you do have any outdoor plans, just keep an eye on that WCNC app so you can track those showers and storms in real time. We've got another baseball game happening, and that is of course the Charlotte Knights. They are at home all week starting today through Sunday, and the first pitch today is at 6:35, so if you are headed out in that direction, again, an isolated shower or storm is possible, but I think most locations will stay dry. Again, just keep an eye on the sky if you head out there. We'll start to cool down into the upper 70s by around 8 o'clock, and then 75 degrees by around 10 o'clock. So getting right into this futurecast, you can see pretty much hit or miss showers and thunderstorms through the afternoon and evening hours, some of which could pack a punch. I do want to add that for sure, but this is just the first round. The main round likely comes again just after midnight, and as it pushes from the mountains into the metro, it is expected to weaken out as it moves off to the east. So that is why There's a higher severe weather threat, especially west of I-77, and a lower severe weather threat east of 77. This is during the overnight hours where it's the least unstable part of the day. So timing with this will be on our side and generally, again, weakening out as it pushes across the metro. So by around daybreak, most of this will be out of here on Wednesday. So that's why it's important to also have those overnight alerts in case we do get a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning. Have that alert on your phone and make sure the sound is on so you do get that alert just in case if you're sleeping. Good news is Thursday and Friday look to be mainly dry, but it is going to be windy out there. Evening hours, again, rain chance is going to be creeping up again, especially after midnight, all the way through about daybreak before a drier air really starts to settle in for the second half of the day. Here is that severe weather outlook for today. Storm Prediction Center has a high outlook in places like Memphis, Cookeville, all the way to portions of the Atlanta metro where you see that shaded red. And the shaded orange, that is a medium threat that encompasses again some of our counties west of I-77, mountains, foothills, all the way down over towards Shelby, Gastonia, Lincoln, and Statesville. A lower end threat the further south and the further east you go. Again, just showing that general weakening of the storms as they push on eastward. However, do still want to be on guard. Again, for everyone's going to have a chance to see a strong storm tonight. As we approach tomorrow, again, it's going to be a wet start, but it's actually going to turn into a nice afternoon. High temperatures will still be in the 80s, but we should see lots of sunshine. And the muggy meter is also going to go down for tomorrow as well, still staying pretty high for today. You'll notice those dew points go way down Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all the way pretty much through this upcoming Memorial weekend. So if you are looking for an excuse to get outdoors, that is your excuse. It is going to be windy. So behind this cold front, there's two cold fronts that are coming through. So the first one's going to bring us the rain and storms, but the second one is going to cool us down into the 70s. It's also going to crank up our winds. I'd say especially Thursday, we can see wind gusts between 40 to 50 miles per hour just in the mountains, and in the metro around 25 to over 30 miles per hour at times. And that's just going to be bringing in that cooler air from the north. So you'll notice high temperatures, especially Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, are going to be met generally in the middle to upper 70s. A few locations hitting 80, but should be great conditions for any Memorial Day activities. I think we'll have a few isolated showers and storms Sunday and Monday, but right now, looking good as we approach Memorial Day weekend.
All right, so here's why I'm complaining. Okay. I just want to set the record straight. I need to set the record straight.
We're going to start with complaints. We're going to end with complaints.
I want to set the record straight. I just came back from San Diego.
Okay.
Where, it's low. It was high 60s, low 70s.
Okay.
And so no humidity.
Right.
And so I could wear a jacket, I could wear a hoodie.
But you don't
and not
live
break
in
a-
California.
I don't.
You live here.
I was spoiled for like 4 days. And so I came back and it was very jarring.
There are big differences between the West Coast and the East Coast.
It is.
Unfortunately, you should just be bi-coastal.
I
from
normally don't complain this early in the year, but
You're getting a jump start.
I got a head start on it. So look, bear with me, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I had to get that out there. So I had to clarify.
Well, at the end of this work week looks pretty perfect in terms of late May weather. It's hard to be
Sturtevant
77,
approved.
78.
I thumbs up all around.
All right,
I'm cool with
thumbs
that.
up.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with
That's
that.
big.
Becca Bursall, thank you for your time. She'll be back at 2:00 with an update on the forecast. So yeah, I will say my complaints. I won't complain. I promise.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's move on.
Oh, wait, I do have to say, I would like to apologize to every single Ghost Pepper. The doubleheader's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay, my bad.
Okay.
That's my bad. They do play tonight, but there's a doubleheader tomorrow. That's my bad.
Oh.
Now you're going to get me in
You
trouble
gotta get that
with
right. Gotta get that
Gastonia.
right. Okay. Look
Had
at
to
us.
say it.
Look
Had
at
to
us
put it
on
out
a
there.
look at us on a Tuesday. All right. So happening live right now, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is holding a hearing. This is a live look. This is Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey. They're having a hearing on the department's fiscal year 26 budget, and with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This is happening live in D.C. Let's listen in to what's going on.
But the torrent I got on the Afrikaners reminded me of the torrent I got from African leaders when the president called those countries like those in Africa shithole countries. The anguish and the anger and the disappointment and the feeling of double standards. So just from a diplomatic range, where we're in a competition in many ways on that continent, you and I talked in your confirmation hearings about the profound moral urgencies, economic opportunity, security mandates, the cooperations with these countries. We have got to do a better job, in my opinion.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serter, and again, right now you're watching live the Senate budget hearing with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That right there live is Senator Cory Booker. I just want to put this out there. These hearings and these feeds that you see, these are raw and uncut, so you may hear colorful language. Thank you, Carlene. And so I just want to brace you for that and give you a heads up for that. All right, let's tune back into what's happening right now.
We have been engaged. Listen, Africa, to me, is one of the priorities that I've set for us in terms of our global view, because of the opportunities, because of the youth of the continent, because of explosive growth that we're going to foresee. And as an example of it, one of the things we prioritized, which a lot of people thought was intractable, was trying to reach a peace agreement between the DRC and Rwanda. Now, it's not done, but we brought them both here to Washington, D.C. about a month ago. They signed a memorandum of understanding. The negotiations are moving forward. They're actually moving forward very well. Our hope is to arrive at a peace deal there that ultimately ends what was turning out to be a very brutal and difficult conflict. So I take your point on Sudan and the need for an envoy. We would love to find the right person to handle that portfolio, because it has to be the right person. And we have played a supportive role. For example, the UK, about a month and a half ago, led a Sudan summit in London for a day, where a lot of other countries, well, we sent someone, we've offered to be helpful and work with them on it. But a lot of other countries either didn't make commitments or didn't live up to the commitments. The summit sort of was a minor disappointment, because while everyone talks a big game around the world about it, they're not stepping up. But I take your point. I'll get you your answer on the flights, because I'm not aware of that specific waiver. And on the envoy, we'd love to work with you to find the right person.
And the ambassadors and other things, I'll reach out to your office on.
Senator Cornyn. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm proud of my vote for you. To confirm you as Secretary of State. We all know you well, having worked with you for many years. We know of your the qualities that you bring to this job, and I think you're exactly the right person for this job in a very dangerous and turbulent world. When I look at what you and the administration has done, just in, it's May the 20th, January the 20th, President Trump was sworn into office, but just a few of the things that have happened during that time. Obviously, the critical minerals deal in Ukraine, the Pakistani-Indian conflict, which could have resulted in a nuclear conflict between two nuclear-armed countries. Things back closer to where I live, the Mexican water deal that was negotiated with Mexico. I'm frankly amazed at your stamina and what you and the administration have been able to do in a short period of time. And listening to some of the criticism that I've heard this morning, it reminded me of a quote from NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers talking about dealing with criticism, things he wished he had known when he was younger. And he said, never listen to criticism from somebody that you never would have taken advice from in the first place. But let me ask you specifically about two issues. One has to do with Ukraine and peace negotiations. I applaud you and the administration, and particularly President Trump, for initiating these negotiations between Ukraine and Russia and try to bring a peace, or at least a ceasefire, between these warring countries. This is enormously dangerous, as you know better than most, because it could easily spill over into the rest of Europe, result in NATO becoming involved and the like. But I wonder what you believe Mr. Putin's motivations are. Do you think that he is engaging in these negotiations in good faith, that he intends to give something in order to get something, or not?
Well, I think that's, on the question of Putin, I think that's still an open question. I think he approaches it, we have to assume, from a cold, calculated cost-benefit, nation-state evaluation of what's in the best interest of his view of Russia. What I'm pretty certain of is this is not the war he thought he was getting. When he first invaded Ukraine, I think he anticipated that the government would collapse and that he would be greeted as a liberator, and it has not turned out that way. And in fact, Russia today controls less territory than they did after the first 2 months of the war. So they've suffered significant losses. They've suffered the losses of at least, by some estimates, 250,000 men in uniform, and the Ukrainians have suffered less, but nonetheless suffered as well. It is a battlefield today in which the front lines move 10 kilometers at a time in one direction or another. Even if they're advancing at a tremendously high cost. But the challenge Russia faces now is their entire economy is built around the war effort. Their entire economy is built around munitions production and, frankly, around the fact that you've deployed about 1 million to 1.5 million people to the front lines, and they're making a lot more money fighting a war than they would in the private sector. So I think that that's potentially a challenge here in terms of bringing this war to an end. What we've tried to do is find any way forward to end this conflict. We think it is costly, it is deadly, it is disruptive, and we want to see it end. We want to see it end because of the destruction to Ukraine. We want to see it end because of the strains it's placing on the budgets of countries, neighboring countries, and the fears that it's stirring up in their regard. We want to see the conflict end in a way that's enduring. Meaning not a peace that lasts 3 months and then restarts again, but something that's enduring, that both sides could live with for a long period of time without it restarting again. And that's hard. There's a reason why. This an effort that I wish would have started 2 years ago, but it's starting now. We've done the best we can because we are able to talk to both sides. Obviously, only one side is getting American aid, and only one side is receiving American sanctions. But nonetheless, we think it's important to preserve our ability to talk to both sides. The President is fully aware and has intimated on a number of occasions that he has options available to him in the sanctions field that he could pursue if, in fact, he determines that Putin is not interested in negotiating. But by the same token, I think the President is very committed to ending the dying, ending the bloodshed, ending the destruction, and he wants to preserve, as long as he possibly can, the opportunity to influence both sides towards peace. The minute you do certain things, your influence over one of the two sides to at least lead to peace really diminishes. And then we're back to where we were in January when he went into the White House, which is with no one had a clear path forward. I mean, there had been no... The first time Russians and Ukrainians have actually met directly and spoken was 3 days ago in Turkey. They had not spoken since the Istanbul process in 2022 had failed. So there are 1,000 prisoners that are going to be released from both sides. From a humanitarian standpoint, that's good. What we haven't seen yet is moves towards peace. It's our understanding that the Russians are going to write up terms for what they would require in order to reach a ceasefire that then would allow broader negotiations. We await those terms, and then we'll have a much better understanding about Mr. Putin's calculation once we see what those terms look like.
So to quote you, the jury's still out.
These are complex conflicts, obviously, that are difficult to bring to bear, and there are a lot of other things playing at stake. But I do think that whatever offer Russia puts on the table, if in fact they do, as they said they were going to do, they put an offer on the table and say, if this happens, we agree to a ceasefire and further negotiations. I think that offer will tell us a lot about their intent here in the short term.
Well, I applaud your and President Trump's efforts to try to bring a ceasefire and hopefully a peaceful outcome to this terrible bloodshed, which has devastated both sides, the Ukrainians and the Russian people. Since you wear multiple hats, including as the archivist and Secretary of State, one of those that you wear is the National Security Advisor, and I want to talk a little bit about the Indo-Pacific and the threat that we face from a potential conflict there. I am delighted to hear President Trump repeatedly say he believes in peace through strength. And I think that is exactly right. I think that's exactly the right approach. But I worry that the United States and our allies are not ready for what could be a conflict initiated by President Xi as early as 2027, when he's instructed the People's Liberation Army to be ready to take Taiwan. General Douglas MacArthur said these words which sort of haunt me in this connection. He said, "The history of failure in war is almost always to be summed up in 2 words, too late. Too late in comprehending the deadly purpose of a potential enemy, too late in realizing the mortal danger, too late in preparedness, too late in uniting all possible forces for resistance." I don't believe we are ready at this point, but can you share with us your view and the administration's view of what we need to do in order to establish that deterrence that comes from peace through strength in the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, in the most simplistic terms, we have to make the benefit of a Taiwan event for China, we have to make the benefit of it less than the costs. In essence, it has to cost more than what it's worth in order to do something like that, and deterrence is the key to that regard. And I think deterrence obviously begins with Taiwan's own self-defense capabilities. And the harder they are to take militarily, the more time I think they buy for themselves in that regard. I think it continues by having a credible regional deterrent, not just the United States, but Japan and other allied countries around the world, and an increased interest in the Indo-Pacific, by the way, from our European allies. I was at the NATO Foreign Ministers gathering over the last week in Turkey, and multiple member states raised their concerns about the Indo-Pacific and what it would mean for the European continent if there were a conflict there. So I think that also underpins why it's important. We have to understand that any time there's a conflict in the Middle East or a conflict in Europe or what have you, that we have to dedicate resources and time to that. That's time and resources that we're not dedicating to the Indo-Pacific. We would like to be able to do all things everywhere, but the fact of the matter is there are finite resources and there's only 24 hours in every day. And so it would be of great benefit if we were able to conclude the war in Ukraine and with Russia and Ukraine, if we were able to establish some stability and peace in the Middle East, if we were able to deal with these issues, it would allow us to focus more time, energy, and frankly resources on some of the challenges we face in the long term with regard to the Indo-Pacific and other parts of the world, but particularly the Indo-Pacific.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back. When you were last testifying before this committee, you and I talked about water in South Texas, and we talked about the 1944 Water Treaty. As you know well, South Texas has, for the last 4 years, faced a severe drought, and that drought has been substantially exacerbated by the conduct of the government of Mexico, and in particular, its repeated and flagrant violations of the 1944 Water Treaty. Under that treaty, Mexico is obligated to provide 350,000 acre-feet of water each year to South Texas. Mexico was breaking that treaty, and there were 1.3 million acre-feet of water in arrears. As a consequence, South Texas is facing a massive drought. South Texas farmers are putting out of production up to half their acreage. They're laying off workers. Last year, the only sugar mill in the state of Texas closed because sugar farmers could not get the water to grow their crop. And you committed at that hearing to work with me and assist in pressuring Mexico to comply with that treaty. In the months since then, you have followed through on that commitment. You have leaned in vigorously with the government of Mexico. Your deputy, Chris Landau, has done the same thing. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins has done the same thing. And then critically, President Trump put out a public statement on Truth Social, making clear to Mexico that there would be serious consequences, sanctions and tariffs if they did not comply with the water treaty. I will say, as a result of the President's leadership and your hard work, we've had a major victory for South Texas, and Mexico has committed to providing 400,000 acre-feet of water, which is desperately needed. So I want to just start by saying thank you. In 4 years under Joe Biden, the Biden administration would not lift a finger for Texans, for farmers in South Texas, to hold Mexico to account, and the Trump administration has done more in 4 months fighting for water in South Texas than Joe Biden did for 4 years. So I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to ask how the State Department is approaching next steps on the 1944 Water Treaty.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that that commitment is met, and then we have to begin to prepare for the next cycle. This is a one-year problem. So we want to continue to work on that to make sure that those commitments are made, and that then in the next cycle, this becomes made permanent, that in essence, this becomes the new standard operating procedure and not a one-off. And by the way, it has to be something that exists beyond the presidency of the current president, because if the next president doesn't prioritize it, it could go back. So I just think this continued engagement with them on our expectations. The truth of the matter is, and in fairness, the Mexican government has grown increasingly cooperative on a number of fronts, both on national security issues and common security issues, but also on issues such as this. We're also happy, I think there's also the new treatment plant that they've opened, the Tijuana wastewater one, that we think will also be very helpful to water issues in the region and also to water quality issues. But this was a good news story. I think it's what happens when you make something a priority and then follow through on it. But we have to sustain it, and that really is our focus now, to sustain this through for future cycles, not just the short term.
So, and I'll tell you, earlier this year, I went down to the Rio Grande Valley with Secretary Rollins, and in December, I wrote a provision in the continuing resolution that provided emergency relief to South Texas farmers, $280 million. And Secretary Rollins came down. Now, Brooke is the first Texan ever to be the U.S. Agriculture Secretary, and she's the first Ag Secretary in history to go to the Rio Grande Valley. And Secretary Rollins and I did a roundtable, and I will say, you and I have both been very focused on the Hispanic community in particular. I will say the impact in the Rio Grande Valley of having a president and an administration that is fighting for them is enormously consequential. And so I was very grateful that she came down, and the farmers and ranchers in South Texas see that they've got a president and an administration that's fighting for them. Let me shift to a different topic. Today, South African President Ramaphosa is in Washington, D.C. He'll be meeting with President Trump tomorrow. You and the President, as well as other administration officials, have repeatedly and rightly criticized South African policies on issues ranging from human rights to activities that directly undermine American national security. Those activities, in turn, include what appears to be an explicit and extensive pivot away from the United States and towards the Chinese Communist Party. There are also serious and credible allegations that the South African government's decision-making is compromised by widespread corruption tied directly to Iran. They are working together to target our Israeli allies on the international stage. President Ramaphosa himself has taken an aggressive position, leading a charge of genocide against Israel in the International Court of Justice. And he has pushed for precedents and policies that will not just undermine Israel, but expose American officials to vulnerabilities as well. I have every confidence that President Trump will demand South African officials change their policies and will hold them accountable if they don't. And it's critically important for the American people to understand the bases for our policies. Please talk a little bit about the extent of South Africa's malign activities and how they are undermining American national security interests.
Well, it's one of the, first of all, we chose not to participate in this year's G20 hosted by South Africa, either at the foreign minister level or the president's level, and it had a lot to do with some of these issues in addition to some of the issues they brought on their agenda, which we don't think reflect the priorities of this administration. So the president of South Africa is here today because he says he endeavors to reset relations between our countries. And President Trump, if someone says that, is always going to be open to resetting relations, but it will have to touch on some of the issues just pointed to now. Obviously, the position they've adopted towards Israel is way, not just off balance, but completely geared towards one side, and it makes one wonder about these allegations that are out there now of foreign influence, including with Iran. They clearly, on the global stage, and multiple multinational organizations, have consistently been a vote against America's interests, time and again.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to shift away from that Senate hearing to the White House briefing that is happening live. That is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt speaking. Let's listen in.
Representatives to talk about the one big, beautiful bill that we are trying to pass through Congress. The president is now back at the White House where he is taking meetings, and later this afternoon he will be making an announcement from the Oval Office with our Secretary of Defense. He's in charge of our military, Pete Hegseth. So I want to thank all of you for coming today. It's great to have you here at the People's House, and you have some very special parents who perform a very special job. And we are here to make America great again, and we live in the best country in the history of the world, and we are all very blessed to be here. So with that, thank you. I am happy to take some of your questions. And why don't you start us off, beautiful little girl? Go ahead.
What's your question for Mr. Trump, Secretary?
She's thinking very hard about it.
You can ask it. You can ask it. She wants to know if Donald Trump likes to give hugs.
Oh, does he like to give hugs? You know, I think he does. I have seen him give many hugs to children and his family and our beautiful First Lady. So yes, I do think he likes to give hugs. You're welcome. Emily, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. What is the funnest part about your job and the hardest part about your job?
Wow. Well, that is definitely a very good question. I think the most fun part about my job is doing things like this with all of you in the briefing room and answering so many great questions. I think the hardest part of my job is also doing things like this in the briefing room and answering all of these questions. And reading the news is a
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Soderman. There, that you're looking live at the White House briefing. So I just want to clarify. You may hear some kids' voices. That's because today is Take Your Sons and Daughters to Work Day. Yes. So it's a lighter moment in the White House briefing. So I just wanted to add some context to that. So let's tune back into what Press Secretary Caroline Lovett is speaking on.
With him on many occasions, and he likes to eat a big, beautiful steak. Do you like steak, Frankie? Yes? Okay. Jack, nice to see you. I like your hat. You're welcome. Would you like to ask a question?
What's the state of the border?
What's the state of the border? I can assure you the border is the most secure it has ever been in the history of our country. And I think your dad works for the Homeland Security Council, so that's a very apropos question, and your dad's doing a great job securing the border. Hazel Jane, what a beautiful name. Would you like to ask a question? Okay.
Actually, can you come back to me?
Sure, I can come back to you. I'd be happy to. Bobby Lynn?
How many people has he fired?
How many people has he fired? Thus far, actually, we have not had anyone fired with the exception of one individual who did leave their job. But we have a great team here so far, so good. Thank you for the question. Yes, little man. Is that your mommy? Your mommy is a great journalist. What's your question?
What's Donald Trump's favorite ice cream? He wants to know.
Ooh. I have seen the president eat ice cream sundaes before with chocolate sauce and some toppings too. Raise your hand if you like ice cream sundaes. It's a very popular policy position to have. Yes, very good. Dario, would you like to go?
What is the president? If the president had a superpower, what would it be?
Wow. If the president could have a superpower, what would it be? That is a very good question. I think if he had a superpower, it would be to just snap his fingers and solve all of our country's problems just like that, because he likes to get things done very quickly, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Like today, he had to go to Capitol Hill to convince people to vote for his one big beautiful bill. I bet if he had a superpower, he would snap his fingers and get it passed immediately, but life doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Go ahead, buddy.
What is Donald Trump's favorite soccer player?
Favorite soccer player? You know, I don't know the answer to that. It's a very good question. I will check in with the president and get back to you. How's that sound? But I know he likes soccer and he likes all sports. Go ahead.
Probably the country like each week.
Does he leave the country each week? No, he doesn't. We left the country last week and we went on a long trip to the Middle East. Very far away, but we have some plans to leave the country later this year, but most weeks he's right here at the White House working very hard. Nora, go ahead.
Which is Donald Trump's favorite president besides himself?
That's a good question, because it would be probably himself. No, I think that perhaps he would say George Washington. I know he speaks very highly of George Washington, who was, of course, the first president of our great country, and he has his big, beautiful portrait hanging in the Oval Office above the fireplace. Good question. Go ahead. You look very professional and beautiful.
Thank you so much. What's it like, for you, I have a question for you. What is it like balancing a baby and your job as the press secretary as your age?
Sure. It's a very good question, and my baby is here with my mother. As you can see, he does not know what's going on. But it is a challenge every day, but it's also a blessing to have this opportunity and to be a mom. So you have to learn to prioritize your time and lean on your support system, which is my mother and my husband and my family and friends. And you can do it. You just have to work very hard. Yes.
Hi, my name is Marceli Victoria. My mom is Sariana Veras.
Nice to meet you.
My question is, as press secretary, as the youngest press secretary, what advice would you give to young girls like me who want to achieve their dreams?
It's a great question, and you're so beautiful. My best advice would be to work as hard as you possibly can and just pursue every opportunity that opens up and is given to you, and just work as hard as you can.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Behind you. Yeah.
What is Donald Trump going to do about climate change?
What is Donald Trump going to do about climate change? Well, that is a very good question. The president cares very much about our environment. He says all the time he wants to have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, the cleanest environment for the world. He also cares very much about our energy independence and ensuring that we can keep the lights on in our homes at a very cheap rate. So we want to make energy here in the United States because we do it cleaner and better than everyone. So I think that's how the president would answer that question. You're welcome. Go ahead.
What is your favorite country that you've been to before?
What is my favorite country I've been to before? Oh, wow. That's a very good question. Well, I've been to many countries. I lived in Italy for a few months to study, but I very much enjoyed our trip last week to the Middle East, where the president went to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, and they were 3 beautiful countries. We'll take a couple more questions. To the back, that beautiful high hand. Go ahead.
What pets did Donald Trump have when he grew up and also right now?
What was that, buddy?
What pets did Donald Trump have when he grew up and also right now?
Well, he doesn't have any pets right now. I don't know if he had any pets when he was growing up. I'll have to check with him and ask, but there's no pets at the White House right now, except for our great canine Secret Service dog friends that are here to protect us. Hazel Jane, did you remember your question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear it.
What's the president's religion?
What's the president's religion? The president is a Christian and he believes in Jesus. Yes? In the back?
What did the president do today?
What did the president do today? The president was very busy today. He went to Capitol Hill earlier today, and then he's here back at the White House, and he's doing meetings, and then he's going to do a big announcement at 3 o'clock where all of your moms and dads will be able to ask him questions directly. Go ahead, buddy. What was that, buddy? How much candy does he eat a day? A good amount. A good amount of candy, yes. He likes pink Starburst and Tootsie Rolls. Yes, buddy, go ahead. We'll take 2 more.
What's the president's favorite order at McDonald's?
President's favorite order at McDonald's. He loves McDonald's hamburgers and French fries. Who doesn't? They're good. In the back. Go ahead, bud.
Your least favorite news outlet?
My least favorite what?
News outlet.
I can tell you're a staff kid, not a journalist kid. Did someone say ABC? Honestly, it depends on the day. Go ahead, honey.
What is President Trump's favorite room in the White House?
Favorite room in the White House? I think his favorite room in the White House is definitely the Oval Office because it's so beautiful and he has decked it out in gold. It's now MAGA gold in there. Yes, go ahead, 1 more.
What's his favorite child?
That is a very controversial question, and I am not going to answer it. I know he loves all of his children very much, and they're all great kids. Some of them were here yesterday. We'll do 1 more to the little girl in the back behind you. Yes.
Who's your favorite president?
Who's my favorite president? Well, that's a good question to answer. Donald Trump. Thank you guys so very much. It's good to see all of you. Thank you for coming. We'll see you later. You're welcome. Happy National Bring Your Kids to Work.
All right, that was a White House briefing that just wrapped up. A lighter moment when it comes to the cute moment when it comes to the White House briefings. Usually they're normally pretty serious, but today was National Bring Your Sons and Daughters to Work Day. So there was that. It just wrapped up. So we are weather alert overnight. We have the potential for some strong storms. This is a live look in Gastonia. This is Caramount Health Park. This is where the Ghost Peppers play. We did clarify there's a doubleheader tomorrow.
Tomorrow. They have a single game tonight. I think it's first pitch at 6:20, and then it's a doubleheader tomorrow. So tomorrow's a long day.
So they will, at least they'll get some good practice time in today.
Yeah.
If they do practice. So it's a beautiful day, a little warm outside. We're going to check in with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, with the look of the forecast and what we can expect overnight.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Pretty calm day today, but there is a very low-end risk for some severe or even strong storms tonight into the early morning hours of Wednesday. It's a pretty isolated risk, but I thought I'd break it down for you just to give you a heads up because it is happening in the middle of the night. So you're not going to be up for this. And if there is a warning, I just want to give you a heads up that we could see some, especially in the mountains where we could see some strong storms coming out of Tennessee. So I'm going to start with the wide view first, and it's a pretty complex setup. We've got a lot of fronts on the map today. A couple things to point out to you. We've got this stalled front to the south. As long as that's there, we're not going to see any issues, but it's going to start traveling north as a warm front probably this evening, and that's when our first chance of scattered storms will possibly develop. But everything is really going to hinge on what happens back here. There's one cluster here, and I anticipate another cluster to develop here. They're going to be pushing east and weakening with time, but always the case with this, how much do they weaken by the time they get to the North Carolina mountains? That's always the tough part. Let's put up the severe weather outlook today real quickly. We'll show you what the outlook looks like. You can see most of our areas in low. There's a little bit of a medium risk that moves in here, but I will tell you, this is probably the biggest question mark in here. But right in here, this would be the area of greatest concern. I'll zoom in. I think if we're going to see a severe storm, like a warning or a watch, it could be issued for parts of the mountains right in here, less so over the Piedmont, but it's not zero. It's like what we like to call a non-zero tornado risk. And then we go into tomorrow, this whole system moves off to the east, and you see that risk shift to the east. So let's get into the timing and kind of the ingredients here with our futurecast. All right, so let's go right to the futurecast, and I'll show you why the threat for us is pretty isolated. So where there's going to be a significant risk today is going to be over Tennessee and Kentucky. This area has been hit hard the last couple of days. A lot of question marks here, and you'll see this reflected in the guidance, which is a look at our futurecast here. So we'll go through time. We'll start this morning. I'm going to go a couple hours here into the afternoon. We'll stop this around 3:30, 4 o'clock. Let me stop this at 4:30-ish because this is usually peak heating. Not a lot going on here, but you see two clusters of storms. One, that the morning cluster, that's moved up into West Virginia. It's the second cluster we're watching. We'll go through the evening hours. I'm going to stop this around 6 to 7. So what's happening here is sunset tonight is coming up at 8:24. That front to the south is here. It's likely traveling north as a warm front. So we could see isolated to scattered storms along that. Some of those could be severe, especially if we get a lot of sunshine and heating of the day. If that doesn't happen, then there would be less of a risk, but it's isolated at best. You could see as we go through time, this is close to sunset. We get some storms to develop along the warm front. So to me, these are the ones that probably are the ones worth watching the most because at least they're closer to the heating of the day. They would have more fuel to feed off of. But there's a big caveat. Right now, I'm looking at the satellite image, a lot of clouds over us, keeping us cool. So if we don't warm up much today, then those could be squashed as well. And the front's moving quickly, so that's out of here fairly quickly. So we get to about 11 o'clock tonight. I'll back this up because I want you to focus on the west. So to the west, you see all these storms, but watch what happens when they approach the mountains. They almost do a little bit of a split because some of the energy looks like it's trying to travel north, some is traveling south. Either way, I bet this stays filled in a little bit more, and the mountains definitely have a risk between midnight and, let's say, 2 a.m. So this is 2 a.m. It all kind of falls apart. I mean, it doesn't look like much, okay? But again, this is just one piece of guidance, and it kind of shows you the kind of uncertainty that is in the forecast. So that's why I said this is not a huge risk for severe tonight. It's a really isolated. Right now, I'd say it's about a 5% chance of severe. That could trend up all based on what happens this afternoon. Now, let's back this up a little bit because I'm going to try to load the most recent run of the guidance here and see if it's coming in. But right now, it doesn't look like it's coming in. To give you an idea that cluster could probably fall apart with time. So let me turn that off, and I'll show you why. Today I was talking about the cloud cover. You see the clouds over us right now? If these clouds hang tough most of the day, this would really squash a lot of the storm development with that warm front coming north. So for that reason, that's why there's still uncertainty on whether we see many storms at all. A lot of folks, trust me, are going to be completely dry and won't see anything out of today. That's why I don't want to overplay the risk, but just tell you, hey, there's this small chance that we could see a couple strong storms, especially in the mountains and foothills. So a real good way to look at the instability. This is that thunderstorm fuel, or what we call CAPE, and this is the short range guidance here. And I'm going to show you through time. You see that warm front coming north today. We go into the afternoon. It's about 2 o'clock. The warm front's coming north. We get to about 7 o'clock or so. You see some instability there. There's some pockets of fuel for storms, especially in our South Carolina county. So you could see some pockets there. It's certainly not off the charts. It's really isolated. And again, this is probably dictated on where those clouds stay and where they don't. So wherever the sun comes out, that's where you see the CAPE or thunderstorm fuel jump up. We go into the overnight hours, watch the fuel starts to shrink a little bit because we're now in the middle of the night. So it's getting dark. We have some out there, but it's not nearly as robust as the afternoon. And it stops here roughly around 1 a.m. So 1 a.m., there's just not a lot of fuel. Down in here, there is some, but as those storms approach the mountains, that's why you're seeing the storms kind of fall apart as they push to the east. So it's certainly something we're going to keep a close eye on as we go into the afternoon hours. We'll watch to see what happens to our west. 2 things to keep an eye on. Do we see a lot of sun this afternoon? Does the warm front get active? And how does this line set up to the west? But right now, just stay weather aware just in case we see a pop-up storm tonight. But overall, this is not a huge risk of severe. Certainly nothing like we're seeing to the west the last week or so. It's just something to keep in mind for the overnight showers and thunderstorms, especially if you live in the North Carolina mountains, because that's the potential where they could hold on long enough to at least produce damaging straight line winds.
All right, so that's Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich giving us an idea of what's going to happen overnight. We are weather alert overnight. Let's shift here from home to the Midwest, where folks are still recovering from deadly tornadoes in St. Louis specifically. Tornado on Friday snapped utility poles, damaged homes and businesses, leaving 5 people dead there in St. Louis. We actually checked in on WCNC Charlotte's Walker Lawson, who gave us a live shot and a look at the damage yesterday. He's back out there today. He's helping out our content partners there in St. Louis, the NBC affiliate there. And so, Walker, catch us up. What's happening there today? What are you seeing? Where are you at?
Yeah, so we're actually in the same neighborhood we were in yesterday. We were just a couple streets back. So what we've seen is last time we spoke, exactly what happened did. We saw storms move through last night. We saw some very heavy rain, and it is now still pretty windy. It just started getting windy here within the last hour. There's still an isolated risk for storms here today. But the cleanup effort is really underway, is what I've noticed today, a dramatic shift. There's more people walking around. You'll actually see over on the street right now, we have some people walking by. People are setting tents up. They're starting to really get some of that work done. And for the first time since we've been in this neighborhood, I can hear chainsaws, which tells me that things are moving in the next direction. But what I did want to show you is this home here that is just probably one of the worst images we've seen of a home that is just completely flattened basically down to its rubble. And you can probably see, I don't know how well my photo can pan into it, but just a little bit above the roof you can see the home beside it. The entire siding has been torn out from probably what was the home falling over to the side. So again, this is going to be a long recovery. This community still remains without power. We have power poles down right here. You have this large utility that came down during the storm. You have massive trees that have been uprooted. trees that have lost their entire canopy. They have been scraped. There's actually a car hidden back there, completely covered and wrapped in debris. Homes have some tarp on the top of them. A lot of homeowners that we spoke to yesterday and today had to accept the fact that they were not going to be able to cover their roofs during the rain that we saw, and it rained hard last night. It was raining for probably from around 10 p.m. last night until 3 or 4 this morning. We saw several tornado warnings around the area last night again, so the community really seeming to not catch a break. And one of the biggest things now that's hindering the impact is a lot of this debris is now soaking wet, so it is heavier to pick up, it's harder to move. And then we've also noticed since it started raining there has been an abundance of mosquitoes that are now out here, so that has become a concern because there's a lot of homes that don't have their windows boarded up, that have parts of their walls out, so there are bugs now that are making their way in. We're discussing earlier today with the TV station here that we're working with, talking about trying to talk to people about concerns for rodents, because this is now a growing issue that it's going to be hard to stop that. You know, you have areas that are without power that have food in these homes, so there's just a lot of challenges that are coming with this, especially as power remains out. The damage was severe because it's such a highly populated area. They're trying to respond to as much as they can, and it's hard to do so. One guy we spoke to today that's from Kansas said he's never lived through a tornado like this before in his life. So he said this is probably one of the worst. So really just a lot of elements and a lot of challenges that these people are having to jump through, Nick.
Wow, yeah, you just see that damage there, and all you can do is shake your head and send up prayers for folks there in the community. Walker, thank you for your time. You guys be safe out there in St. Louis as you're covering the aftermath and storm. I mean, still storms may be on the way there in that area. Again, Walker, thank you for your time. All right, so let's shift gears now. So we want to head over to Minneapolis, where as the city prepares to mark 5 years since the murder of George Floyd, city leaders are discussing the status of the city's police reform efforts following the release of the second semi-annual report from effective law enforcement for all the for the independent monitor evaluating the city's compliance with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights settlement agreement. Again, this comes on the heels of the 5-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd's death. That press conference is happening right now. Let's take a live listen in.
To prioritize things and so on. But I think it's been very, very clear over and over again that people are thankful and have noticed, I would say, the difference in officers' demeanor, in officers' efforts, and just in how urgently and how seriously we are trying to address the problems our residents are seeing as best we can.
So is there a morale shift then within the department since the increased staff and some of the changes, but you also at the same time mentioned, Renee brought up the fact that they're still uncertain about the future, so what's going on with that?
I don't know if I could say that there's a morale shift due to a consent decree. Right. I don't think that would be a truthful statement anywhere. But I do think, I know from what some officers' spouses and family members have told me, our officers are starting to heal. It's been a long 5 years. It's been very, very difficult for people. I think they're starting to be proud of what they do again, getting back to the reasons why they got into this profession in the first place, and I think they are starting to see that the community is recognizing that as well.
And I'll just say, huge just shout out to Chief O'Hare and his team, because they're really the ones helping guide this through. And so throughout Chief O'Hara's tenure, he has promoted culture of health, wellness, and just really performance based on community standards as well. So just tremendous credit to Chief and his team.
What part of the report disappointed you the most, or feel that you need to work on the most?
I was aware of, so Esme's question, I'm sorry, is what disappointed me the most in the report? Again, I thought it was fair. I have been very engaged myself in this process. I've implemented a lot of what we do with compliance checks and kind of weaved it into our weekly crime meeting. I've made it clear to our command staff that this work is important to me, not because we're being forced to do it, because I believe this is the right thing to do for our people and for the community going forward. But, you know, I'm aware of how all of this has developed. I'm not reading anything on here that's new or that I have not experienced before or that is not accurate. I'm aware of the challenges that we've had, and we have worked through it. So now I'm not disappointed, surprised by anything. I think it is an accurate reflection of the reality we've been through.
Chief, there's sections like, you know, there's a lot that says it's positive that has been accomplished, but there's also some things that says like has taken significant times at some points to submit policies.
Yep.
And also, you know, in the section about year 2 goals, has a few sections that are at risk of becoming non-compliant.
Yes.
Do you have any concerns about achieving those goals?
Those, Louis' question was, you know, there's some sections that say things might be at risk for future goals, right? So that's how we measure this stuff weekly. So we hold a meeting weekly internally just to talk about reform throughout the department. And so, again, I think that's an accurate reflection of reality. The report will tell you, if you look carefully through all of it, we have staffing issues. We need to hire more people to do some of these things. There's additional time, you know, constraints and commitments. But I think objectively, you know, we're not the only ones with constraints. You know, MDHR only has a certain number of people that can dedicate at times to reviewing policies, and same thing on the monitoring team. And I think a lot of what's happened, we've seen there's been a huge demand on everybody involved the first year, and at the end, we're trying to jam hundreds of pages of policies all through the same funnel. And I think everyone involved, MDHR, the city, and the monitoring team, you know, has been very committed. It's taken a lot of time, but certainly there's constraints that are not the police department's fault or the city's fault. They're just the reality of constraints that exist in this process.
And what would you say to, earlier this year, it was pointed out that there's a number of activist groups that made criticisms of OLEPA being former law enforcement officers, and whether there can be bias or complaints about how things went with their work in New Orleans. What would you say to those people concerns?
I mean, I think having been someone who's been involved with this for a long time and done it in a different city and been around other cities, the major problem with consent decrees is oftentimes is the way monitoring is set up in the first place. It can become a cottage industry. You know, a monitoring team can just sit home and on Zoom once in a while and send the city bills, and that's it. That's not what happens here with this monitoring team. They have been very engaged, and in my opinion, we're fortunate to have them this way. And certainly, you know, I understand everybody has their opinions and so on. I would want people involved with some level of expertise if they're going to come in and be the experts on how things are going to run. And I think we would want a diverse group of people. And I think, yes, that should include, you know, folks who have experience in managing, you know, complaints and things. It also should include folks who have experience running police departments under consent decrees. And I think it's a good thing to have people with experience that other folks don't have, as opposed to just taking someone random.
Yeah, what kind of...
One more question.
And just kind of what kind of backgrounds are these people that are doing this work, if they're law enforcement, also other backgrounds?
Yeah, I mean, you know, David Douglas, I believe, was a monitor himself previously. Michael Harrison was a police chief in 2 cities under a consent decree. Arlinda Westbrooks was a civilian head of internal affairs. Another there's several others I have experience either in a police department or on a monitoring team elsewhere, and others who have experience, very, very specific expertise in certain areas, certain subject areas. And I would think you want people with subject area expertise to be involved.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to shift here to New Orleans, where New Orleans City Council members are addressing the issue of the escaped inmates at this meeting happening live, with the full council expected to be here. Again, this is a city council meeting in New Orleans addressing the issue of the escaped inmates. Let's take a listen in.
And if they do, what role do they play, and how can they help in terms of the count, the pressure, and the responsibility that's placed on you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. All of our partners. I established the Jail Population Management Unit towards the end of 2023. We started drilling down on the numbers, who's in there, what are they in here for, how many state, probation and parole, pretrial, misdemeanor, or felony. So we're able to, and we put out a report each month, we'll be able to dust off the recommendations that Jail Population Management Unit has put together for all of the actors in the system. Because one of the things, when I got into office in 2022, the average daily stay for people who are getting out was like 88 days. We cut that in half. That is what has kept the population from being way out of control. Because we were at 1,600 at one point last year. So we are looking at efficiencies within the system. Every month, I think we take the entire, every week or every month, we take the entire population of the jail to court, so where the courts are open and functioning. But there's some things we can all do. We're trying to go, as we upgrade our systems, we're trying to go paperless, because that causes delays. We're just trying to find more efficiencies in the system, and we meet with the district attorney, I think once a week, once a month, something like that. There's a regular meeting where we show our numbers, we show those who are the most problematic in the jail and who have been there the longest. So we share this information. We ask judges to take a look at who's in our jail as well and what they're in here for, take a second look at folks. But we have this information, which is also crunched, the numbers are also crunched by Commissioner Stevens' office to show who's in the jail. And as a part of the Krasnov meetings, which has a sub-jail population management committee, we've talked about just reducing the number of days that people who are already going to get released, not those who are sitting for trial, those who are also going to get released, we can be more efficient in managing that. And then that will help us to manage those who are going to be in custody until trial, which is averaging over 2 years, I believe. So we're trying to be more efficient all the way around. And we have a number of recommendations we've shared with you, and we will dust those off and provide them to you again.
Okay. Ms. Montano, if you could come back to the mic for a second, we're going to start focusing on, so the public can hear about solutions. It's been mentioned about coordinating systems in brass. You guys started working together. How long could it be before the sheriff's department and the city, how long would it be before they could be part of brass? How long do you think it would take?
For the first time today, Mr. Montano said that brass can take care of our inventory. There were 7 systems.
You never heard that before?
No, because it wasn't available. So brass at first did not do that at all. Then they said they would take a look at it. And somebody from the city up on the dais said that I don't know if it was the city attorney's office, somebody said, this was at a last budget meeting, they would look again to see if they could. So this is the first time we've heard that they may be able to do the 7 other systems that are, we run also a mini city and inventory and a number of things that we have to keep track of as well. Okay, so we want to look at that more.
This segment I'm on now is kind of following Councilman Giroux, so we're solution-oriented now. We're not pointing fingers and looking at problems. How long will it take for you guys to get in a room and work out a joint system where they're on brass?
Mr. Chairman,
an estimate.
I would say that there's different parts. I think it can be done in the very short term as far as execution. The challenge with technology cohesion is implementation. I think that is what's going to be the longer term aspect. So finding the right system that fits the sheriff's and the city's needs in a way that we can both mutually evaluate. And I learned this significantly through their ARPA project when we had to have the courts on the same JMS system with the same CAD system, all those different units talking. I assure that there are systems that communicate far better than they did years ago. So that is absolute, that the systems can integrate in a way where we can have visualization. So it just is a matter of a willingness and a participation to deploy that opportunity for these systems to mirror and match each other, and then execution of that particular software. And the long-term aspect the Sheriff's Office would have would actually be implementation of whatever future software would be.
Okay, so let me and the budget chairman know when that meeting happens, so we can try to be as expeditious as possible.
And to your previous question, I feel like we do interact with the financial department significantly. I know I'm not sure.
Y'all know each other.
Well, I think you're relatively new to this role. Prior to this was David and then Keith, and we met with them significantly. I don't know. I think so the short answer is yes. I know there have been a few transitional movements within that particular department, but committed and willing to sit down, meet, discuss, really evaluate some of the fund balance conversation relative to those questions, and most importantly and acutely discuss the technology inclusion so that we can have better understanding of not just revenues and expenditures, but actually specificities related to that.
Potential solution. Solution question number 2.
Yeah, so I talk with his team regularly.
Gotcha.
Brandy, Shelby,
Gotcha.
the innovation team.
Okay.
We're in conversation.
The federal facility, Supermax in Colorado, has soft spots. Whenever there are things that they would think that inmates can't do, we see the reports on 60 Minutes about what happened at the Supermax. But then there's a review of those soft spots. Since this has happened, what systems are in place to review those soft spots? Because what people don't understand, you don't want high technology stuff at the door that leads you to the pipe where they monitor how much water is flowing. That's a whole nother level of cost, right? Now, and if we get to that point, I don't know who would be able to afford a prison. But what are we doing in reviewing those soft spots, especially since this breach has happened?
We know most of them, as Chief Mallett has, with his 25 years experience, has gone through and put together a list, and then we prioritize what we need to do. But as we said, DOC is here as well, and they brought a large team to just look at everything. So we're looking forward to them, and we're sharing the information about things we can't talk about here that are also issues with the facility. But we should be hearing from them pretty soon about confirming what we've talked about and maybe finding some other issues as well.
We worked. I mean, we've getting conversation from the National Institute of Corrections, several correctional experts across the country willing to come in and do periodic reviews of our security systems and infrastructure. They have reached out since this event, and I think it's important to illustrate that public safety is paramount and the cornerstone of what we do. So,
well, do we need a professional facility audit now?
We're in the process of getting that now.
That's been done.
No, we're working to get that done.
We're working to get that done. So we can tell the public now potential solution.
The Department of Corrections arrived this morning.
Okay, now another question. It was alleged through the news that the person who was doing the counts, someone went on lunch, and while they were on lunch, there wasn't anyone accountable. So when we talk about labor deployment, the next time someone has a lunch break or a break, how are we looking at making sure that at least there's someone there to take their place?
Again, there's an active investigation going on. We have protocols in place for that, and the investigation is going to uncover a lot of the deficiencies.
So that won't happen anymore. If someone's on lunch in a real critical area, there'll be somebody there to fill in that gap to take their place, right?
60% staffing against council. I cannot guarantee that because on a given night, suppose there was a fight occurred.
In a high security area?
Well, there are mandatory pods under the consent judgment as well. So those ones are ones that we have to cover also. under our federal consent judgment as well. So, and then if you have to route people to the hospital or something of that nature, that causes all kinds of shifting in the system. So there is a central control unit that can also monitor, as well as those pod modules with where there's control.
So let's talk about shifting. And I'm going to invoke a lot of responses with this. Right? So let's talk about shifting. There are certain tiers, certain parts of facilities that are for different kind of inmates, different kind of charges, different kind of prisoners. If it's true that these high-level offenders were on the first floor, how will we take a look? Should they have been on the first floor? Should they have been in a more secure part of the prison? Or should they have been in a place where there was more labor deployed? So for the public, what are we doing to make sure that piece doesn't happen again?
I can speak to that. Most of the prison is considered high security. We have a particular open bay area of the facility where there is no cell blocks. It's a dormitory style, barrack style setup. And then we have cell blocks. And that's what we're trying to harden, because we have individuals that have committed violent crimes outside of the facility walls, have committed violent crimes inside the facility walls. So we're in the process now of trying to harden those with funds that we have. And that's the project that we had in place. And we right now are complete, at 50% complete on that project with our locks and hinges and strengthening that cell environment. Then we have the overflow, if you will, where we had individuals, because we got them classified, we keep getting individuals in, and you know, it's a high level of individuals that are considered high security. So the goal is to harden the facility, make the entire facility high security, because on any given day, we can be at 100% capacity with high security inmates.
But until you can harden the entire facility, should they be in the most hardened section of the prison? With the most eyes and most systems watching.
Since Friday, since DOC picked up 63 male individuals, we were able to move those high security people that were on the first floor to the third floor.
Sheriff?
Well, we have a classification system which decides where people go, and that is, it means we have to move people in accordance with it, and it's part of the consent judgment. That can cause some people to move in other places where we would rather not have them.
I just think right now it's important to let the public know, based on these allegations and things that have been said, procedures are being put in place, not where we're talking about what did happen and why it happened, but what needs to happen. So let's get even a little more granular, right? Counts. Now, different systems use different ways of counting, right? There's work call, medical, infirmary, court, programming, bed checks. Now, some of that is federal stuff. It may not apply to a jail or local systems, but how are we reevaluating counts just to make sure, because what maybe some folk don't understand, if you got some people on court or worker, it's a different kind of count system that's used when you're counting who's in the prison versus those people who are on special assignments or in programming. How are we taking a look at counts now, especially to demand accountability, especially since this happened?
We have changed the count structure to include.
That's important. So we
have changed the count structure to include more counts, particularly our counts and the counts that's during the morning time hours. The minimum here jail standards is twice a day at shift change. So we've gone above and beyond what is required because of this, and basically a better practice. And so we have enhanced our security counts.
And the reason why, first of all, you have to have some knowledge to kind of understand that. But there's a viral piece now of me from 1994 about a former inmate, Mercadale, who was a repeat escapee under Sheriff Fody. And if you have people whose jacket includes trying to escape from other facilities, highly potentially violent within the prison, then you want to count them differently. You want to count them more often. You want to count them in a more secure spot of the detention or the facility. Are we taking that into consideration now?
Yes, sir.
That's a solution.
It is a solution, and I actually walked into that. The sheriff had put in place, and we're going to start with that at the end of the month. A new jail management system is going to alert us to these particular type people that are high risk, potentially for escape. We see now that we have a significant population of individuals that have juvenile escape records that isn't quite captured. So now this system will help us identify better those individuals, particularly since we know that they are staying in custody longer. So that should come online sometime towards the end of the month, early June, and that will be a game changer in helping identify these type of individuals.
Solution.
Yes, and movement throughout the building or throughout the city, where it will know with real updated technology instead of 1980s technology.
And then lastly, my question is on deployment of personnel. When you're short-staffed, you have to deploy your personnel or use your personnel differently. But the responsibility of how they're going to be used doesn't go away. We see that happening with law enforcement all over the country in the police department, and you've been doing it since you've taken over. Who's helping you look, or is there some expertise within your staff that's looking at deployment of personnel, critical positions, critical spaces, to help what happened last week to minimize the opportunity of that happening again? Because we can continue to say we don't have enough people, but we got what we got. We have what we have. And how do we utilize that personnel in the best fashion to at least minimize events like this and emergencies like this?
Well, I can't take the credit for it, but the sheriff had a...
Can't take the credit. You're getting blamed for a lot.
I can't take the credit for it, but sheriff had an emergency deployment plan in place when I got there. We took a look at it, so we employed at any emergency situation. That's why we were able to have boots on the ground when the breach was discovered to start to search the entire facility. So there is an emergency deployment plan, fully activational, and that encompasses all divisions and areas within the agency.
And then lastly for me, Sheriff, because of this event, what assurance can you give the public that, you know, nothing's 100% proof, 1,000% proof, but that an incident like this will not happen again? What assurances can you give to people watching this hearing and those who are, whether it's their business, their home, or who are concerned? What can you tell them about how do we make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. We are learning from the failures that occurred, whether it's notifications, whether it was personnel failures, building failures, whatever the issue is, putting a plan in place to deal with those known threats and known security issues, because this is, as I said at the beginning, and you said as well, absolutely unacceptable.
And what will happen to the people if it's found that they were compliant, complicit, or part of this? What will happen to the people who are responsible for this if they helped, if they aided and abetted in this situation?
Same thing that happened to our employee last night. They'll be arrested, held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, and there are going to be administrative penalties for folks, even if there aren't criminal as well. So we will be holding them accountable both criminally and administratively.
Councilmember Green.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer until after public comment.
Okay. Councilmember Moreno, okay, we'll go to the public. Mr. Ricky Peterson. Mr. Peterson, thanks for waiting.
Ricky Peterson, 4555 Dot Avenue, District E. I'm not paid to be here. And what I'm going to speak on as my experience as an inmate and what I've learned through my education and my transition to become a social worker, to get my social work degree. The first thing I want to say is that when I heard of this breach initially of the escape and that it happened, it was seen hours later that they had escaped at 1:08 a.m. on camera, but it wasn't actually detected till they did the first morning count. I immediately thought inside job, because if they're not counts, whoever was on staff should have at least been doing visuals of those inmates to make sure that each inmate was at least in their cell when they were supposed to be at lights out. And I assume those type of security walkthroughs would take place either 30 minutes or every hour, I assume, based on my experience. Now, that's why and that's why you have an arrest of an employee, because that employee probably didn't do or falsely documented that he or she did those walkthroughs, and they actually did not. And when that security breach happened, when it was notified, once in the morning when they notified they had a shortage of inmates, the first thing you do, you don't immediately go to escape, you don't immediately go to see we got to notify the press and the public. You don't do that based on my experience. What you do is you lock down the facility, you do a second count, and yes, those counts can take hours to clear. And we're not even talking about an escape. We're just talking about just maybe an inmate was gone out on med leave, or maybe they was transported and it wasn't properly documented. That's why you had that one incident where you thought one inmate had escaped and they didn't, because it wasn't.
Very good comments. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Everybody's got 2 minutes. Thank you. Great points. Ms. Rhonda K. Oliver. Ms. Oliver.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Oliver. I live in District B. I want to say, for number one, I did work in the Department of Finance and the Treasury Department, and I think that BRAS is a great system, and I believe that the Sheriff's Office should be a part of BRAS. You all are elected officials. The Sheriff is elected official, and I think that in BRAS, it's transparent, and the public, you owe that transparency to the public. As far as the gentleman just said, I think they need to get with St. Gabriel, because St. Gabriel counts less than 1,200 inmates in 3 minutes. That count better be clear in 3 minutes. I don't care if you're at University in New Orleans. I don't care if you're at LSU detail. Every unit clears within a minute or so, and the total account that's tallied by one person is clear. And again, in 3 minutes, it's clear. So, again, I just think that the public should have been notified, not that it was an escape, that you think 10 people are gone. Not that they are gone, that you know they are gone. Just let us be on alert, because you believe 10 people may have escaped because the count is not clear. And then that way, the public could be on alert. If they didn't escape when you do your check, fine. But if they did, at least you can now say the names and you know for certain. So yes, I do believe that the public should have been alerted that 10 people potentially could have escaped. So the public could have had their head on a swivel. And I also want to thank Ms. Marino for being on the news, because that's what we needed her to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Renata Collins.
Good morning, Renata Collins at 3701 Conti Street in New Orleans. First, I do want to say thank you guys for your service, and we know that this is something that don't happen all the time, but as I was sitting down listening to all of the things, being a person with limited resources, I don't always think that throwing money at the situation is a thing. I consider how the people was not managed to be watched. Like, how do we not have that part in operation? We are relying so much on computers and technology that we're not effectively doing the city or the people or the constituents a good job. So instead of saying, hey, let's throw more computers at things, let's throw more automation at things, we need to be more hands-on. I think that is one of the biggest disconnects, in addition to the lack of unity. Because at the end of the day, we all do deserve to have unity as we are considering a whole lot of things. I wish I had the time to expound on everything that I heard, because there's a lot of deficiencies that is definitely present. At the end of the day, we do want to be able to know that we're able to account on you guys, because we're able to get in and out of our calls thinking that you guys have our best interests and that we're going to be notified effectively and thoroughly. I also heard the sheriff says about the law. Now, I consider, because I hear a lot of people who tell us that they're in jail for 14 months, way too long, and they haven't even had a trial. So while we're talking about the law, let's give the people the rights to the due process. Let's get the people in and out in a timely fashion so that we could do that. Let's get the boots on the ground so that you guys could be able to work within the capacity according to what you guys say that is law. And let's hold those people accountable as they are. And I believe that once we've unified effectively and together, we will do great. Thank you for your time. And I hope I had more time to explain. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any online comments?
Yeah, we had 2 online comments. The first one is from Cliff Dugar. He says, clearly this was an inside and outside job. I've seen the sheriff before the council sounding like alarm about the locks design of the jail manpower concern. She definitely helped save Mardi Gras with her efforts of voluntary help and reaching out to other jurisdictions. Someone had to pay whomever assisted in this jailbreak and getaway, cutting bars closed, and knowledge of the facility to get out that quickly. The timing of this is definitely suspect. And Jim Johnson comments, there was talk of the jailbreak being an inside job. Realistically, are corrections officers paid enough to avoid bribery being a common issue? In the military, the most common reason for a security clearance being denied is financial difficulty. In a perfect world, everyone has integrity. In the real world, bills have to be paid.
Councilmember Green.
Mr. Chair, this is certainly a controversial issue and it's a public safety issue, but I want to look at the members of the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office who are in the first row, and I want to talk to the hundreds of officers in the correction system who work. I just want to let you all know that we see the challenges. Beyond the challenges that we're talking about today, you all deal with people who are hardened criminals, who come there many times with attitudes of disagreement with the system, who take it out on the system, who take it out on you all. It was not just a tour that I went on, but it was an opportunity to talk to some of you all. And at the end of the day, there's going to be certainly, this is a big story and it should be a story. We need to get those 6 people who are still out there. We need to find out who their accomplices were. We need to focus on that. But I think that we need to also recognize the fact that on a day-to-day basis, members of the correction system deal with some very challenging issues. I've seen them on videotape. I've unfortunately seen a murder on tape. At the end of the day, you have a very, very difficult job, and we want your help. We want your input. We want you to work with the sheriff's office and to suggest to the council, based on your experience, what we may do. But we can't get lost in the fact that on a day-to-day basis, members of our community, our law enforcement community,
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right now, you're watching live as New Orleans City Council members address the issue of the escaped inmates at a meeting. Now, just to add a little bit more context and meat to the story, from the NBC affiliate there in New Orleans, they're reporting that Council Vice President Helena Moreno is working with state legislators to draw a law requiring immediate notification to law enforcement, media, and the public when an inmate escapes from jail. Now, a law already exists for immediate notification when a juvenile escapes, but the new proposal seeks to include adult escapees as well. So again, this is a live look at New Orleans City Council as they address this issue regarding the escaped inmates. All right, so we want to shift away from that and we want to come back home. Becca Bursall joins us again here in studio, and you've been keeping your eyes on the radar because right now we have a warning right there on the radar. Can you explain for us?
That's right. Yeah, we were talking about isolated storms that would be possible during the afternoon, evening, and nighttime hours, even out ahead of what we are weather alert for during the overnight hours tonight. Now, we do have a new severe thunderstorm warning, and it's the only storm that we actually have currently on the board, and it's going to be impacting the very southern portion of Lancaster County. So if you are listening from Lancaster County, just keep that in mind. Not only are we looking at really heavy rainfall, but really strong winds, about 60 miles per hour, as well as quarter-sized hail, which is 1 inch in diameter, and why the National Weather Service went ahead and issued that severe thunderstorm warning. So just going to zoom in on this. Again, this is only impacting southern Lancaster County. A lot of this is going to be outside of our viewing area, but it is brushing Great Falls and headed towards Heath Springs. So this is just an update. If you are living in any of these areas, may want to move your car indoors, again, as this does have some quarter-sized hail with this system. This is all out ahead of the main line that we're expecting to come through late tonight and early Wednesday morning, which is why we are weather alert, and this is just the very beginning of likely an active night ahead. As the warm front lifts through, I expect to see isolated thunderstorms pretty much throughout the afternoon and evening. So if you do have any outdoor plans, definitely want to download that WCNC app so you can track those showers and storms in real time. You can see off to the west in places like Nashville all the way up towards Kentucky, got lots of strong storms, and that is the line that is going to be headed our direction, especially later on tonight. Warm front is going to be lifting through. That's going to be rising up our dew points, making it feel a little bit sticky out there and providing some juice for the atmosphere and some fuel as these storms actually come through. It's also going to warm temperatures up. So for today, it's going to feel sticky, and the heat index will likely be several degrees warmer than the high temperature, likely feeling more like the mid-80s. We do want you to stay weather alert, again, especially for that main round of storms that will be coming through from midnight all the way through about 6 a.m. on your Wednesday morning. Again, this is pushing from the mountains into the metro, bringing along with it some really heavy rainfall, strong wind gusts, and a few severe thunderstorms as well. Main concern is going to be an isolated tornado that cannot be ruled out, especially over towards west of I-77, but probably damaging wind gusts upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour is probably going to be the most likely scenario. This was a very similar setup to Saturday morning. We had storms roll through the overnight hours, and they actually were able to maintain their strength, even though the morning hours is pretty much the most stable part of the entire day. It's typically the afternoon and evening where we have the most unstable air. So when it comes during the overnight hours, it's typically not as much fuel, but if these storms do hold together just like they did for Saturday morning, that means we could still see several severe thunderstorm warnings with really strong winds and some small sized hail as well, which could also, the wind damage could easily down trees and power lines. So that's going to be the primary threats with this system. Much higher severe weather threat is going to be off to the west, where you see in red shaded places like Cookeville, Memphis, Atlanta, all the way across the southeast. This generally means that this is going to be a weakening line of thunderstorms as they approach the Carolinas, and especially as they cross the mountains into the metro. So you'll notice west of I-77 under a medium threat, and east of I-77 under a low threat as they continue to work its way to the east. Dew points for today, thanks to that warm front, are just going to be very sticky. They'll likely be in the middle to upper 60s across much of the area. It's something that will last all day today before we start to see some relief, especially by the end of the work week. So for this afternoon, certainly not a washout. Again, may have to dodge a couple of hit or miss thunderstorms, but if you do, again, have any outdoor plans, keep them. Just definitely keep an eye on the radar with high temperatures, mainly in the lower to middle 80s. Heat index value probably feeling more like the middle 80s. Heading off to the night's game, first pitch is at 6:35 this evening. Again, a couple of isolated showers and storms in the forecast, but not going to be a washout. So walking you through this future cast, hit or miss thunderstorms basically now all the way into the nighttime. Main round comes just after midnight, generally weakens out as it continues to push across the metro. And by around 7, 8 o'clock on your Wednesday morning, storms will be out of here. We'll be looking forward to a much drier, warm afternoon, but also windy as well. And we'll continue to stay mainly dry through the end of the work week. So for tomorrow, again, first half of the day may start off a little bit wet and certainly active, but once the storms push off, we should see some sunshine break out. High temperatures right back into the middle 80s. Got some good news in this forecast, especially for the end of the work week. First cold front that's going to bring us rain and thunderstorms. As that second cold front eventually pushes off, that's going to bring in so much cooler air, drier air, and also ramp up our winds as well, especially on Thursday. Thursday is where we could have wind gusts up in the mountains between 40 to 50 miles per hour, and just in the metro, upwards of 30 miles per hour at times. So going to be watching for the potential of some downed trees just within these winds, and especially if soils are saturated. So something that we'll be watching. The better news is we'll have lots of sunshine, temperatures falling into the 70s Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and really only isolated rain chances as we approach your Memorial Day weekend. So if you have any plans, of course, there's a lot happening. Charlotte FC game on Saturday, Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday, and of course Memorial Day on Monday. So right now, looking pretty good for those plans.
A good weekend that has some plans.
Any complaints?
No complaints.
No complaint. I told you.
Okay.
I told you no complaints.
Not
I'm
yet.
not going to make any complaints.
Not yet.
I was going to let you do your forecast, not do.
You were quiet.
I was pretty quiet. I look. Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. We'll take
everybody.
it.
Thumbs up. Becca, thank you for your time. Yes. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And Carlene and I, we're cats out the bag. We're off on Monday, so
We're off on
we're
Monday.
off on Monday.
We're off on Monday. So we're very excited.
It's Memorial Day. All right. Where do we want to go to next, Carlene? We have okay. We're gonna go back. We had a couple of things happening. So, all right. So we want to go back to Karen Reed. Actually, it looks like that shot is frozen, Carlene. Do you want to go out to San Diego? I do have some information on what's happening there.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So this is from NBC7 in San Diego. And this is what I'm getting from their web article. So bear with me. So law enforcement officers descended onto San Diego International Airport's tarmac today, where passengers could be seen disembarking a plane or getting off a plane. Police activities seem to center on a Hawaiian Airlines plane that was reportedly scheduled to depart at 8:28 a.m. For Honolulu. Video from their chopper, their helicopter, showed dozens of emergency vehicles on the tarmac near the plane, including patrol cars and unmarked black SUVs. Notably, no fire vehicles seem to be parked nearby, but a pair of airport shuttle buses are parked nearby. The unofficial flight tracking site FlightAware showed minimal delays and only one cancellation as of 10:30 a.m. And again, that is Pacific time. This is out on the West Coast. Again, this is a live look at that plane. Police surrounded it. That's the information we have. This is in San Diego. All we know, law enforcement are surrounding that plane. That's a Hawaiian Airlines plane. That plane was set to go to Honolulu. Obviously, it's grounded. It's not. Fire vehicles are, and emergency crews, as far as firefighters, are not extremely close to the situation. They're nearby, but not close enough where there is any sort of fire danger that appears. And that's according to NBC7 San Diego. So again, this is a live look at the Hawaiian's airline flight that is grounded. It was expected to go to Honolulu, but look, if you're there in San Diego, flying out there, according to FlightAware, and this is an unofficial flight tracking site, it showed minimal delays and only one cancellation as of 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So again, you see it's a lot happening there. We will continue to keep an eye on this in this situation as more news comes in, but that's the reason why you keep it on Live Impact News, because again, we spotted that. I was able to pull up some information, and I want to come on air and bring you what I know, what we know so far. So that's what we know. All right, so we want to shift now. I see Senator Lindsey Graham speaking. Is this the hearing?
For Rubio, yes. Foreign relations.
Okay. So this is a hearing that we brought to you earlier. This is Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on the department's fiscal year 2026 budget with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This is happening in D.C. right now. That is Senator Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina. If you're from the Carolinas, well familiar with Senator Lindsey Graham. Let's take a listen in to what's happening right now.
Nation. and that is unacceptable to me and hopefully to all of us. So civilian nuclear power, yes. Enrichment, no. I think it's good policy for the country to follow. Russia, Ukraine, Secretary Rubio explained the role the Senate and the House plays in our system to the foreign ministers of NATO, but quite frankly, he's been very clear to the Russians that the Senate is a separate body with its own will. And I hope President Trump is right that Putin wants peace. Time will tell. He certainly doesn't act like a guy wanting peace. We have now 80 co-sponsors of sanctions against Russia for their invasion of Ukraine. I would like to get this war over honorably and justly. And one of the problems we have with this war is China. In case you're listening in China, which I doubt you are, you're propping up Putin. If you would stop buying their cheap Russian oil, he'd have a reason to get to the peace table. India and China are propping up Putin's war machine, and the sanctions we have are secondary in nature. They put a 500% tariff on any country that buys Russian oil, gas, uranium to prop up the Putin war machine. This body will move sooner rather than later if Putin doesn't get to the table. And to China, you want to be a normal country, act normally. Quit buying cheap oil with blood mixed in it to keep a war going that you could end tomorrow if you chose to. Your plate is about as full as anybody I've ever seen. You're juggling so many things at once, and I just admire you and the way you've conducted yourself, and I think you're the right person at the right time. So welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Graham. Secretary, good to see you again. It's been an hour or so. For all of the disruption of the past few months, we are still in a position to write a bipartisan bill in SFOPs, but things need to change if we're going to be successful. If the goal, and I want everyone to hear this, including my Democratic colleagues, if the goal is to reform American foreign assistance so that we can do fewer things and better, then you were pushing on an open door to begin with. If the goal is to reduce overhead, make more strategic investments, and eliminate the tiny fraction of programs that you feel aren't essential to those objectives, you will have bipartisan support for that conversation. Making reforms to be smarter and more strategic with our investments while also preserving the things that were already working, PEPFAR, FMF, life-saving aid, disaster response, is still possible. And Mr. Secretary, I think you know I'm sincere in wanting to work with you to enact a bill that does just that. But we also have to have an honest conversation about what has been happening. And I want to address a few claims this morning. You said that PEPFAR is 85% functional. You've actually cut it to 70%, and by law, you are required to spend the remainder. You have said repeatedly that only 12% of assistance reaches local populations, quoting Samantha Power from a previous report. That is actually not true. The USAID report from last year found that 12% of aid is implemented by local organizations, but that's completely separate from the question of how much aid is actually reaching people. That's Catholic Charities, that's the World Food Program, that's CARE, that is not overhead. Those are other organizations, not local organizations, but flagship American organizations that deliver aid abroad. You have said there is waste and fraud and abuse. I encourage you to make any referrals necessary to the inspectors general. You've said sharing information and taking comments from Congress is essential, but there was only one briefing. I'm hoping all of that can change. As I said earlier, the changes that you're making are not occurring in a vacuum. They are having catastrophic outcomes in the real world. Kids are dying. Mothers are passing HIV onto newborns. We are abandoning our Indo-Pacific partners and paving the way for China to swoop in. And allies are having to beg for the FMF, which they've come to rely on. Even the few programs that have been retained are having a hard time implementing effectively. Fighting HIV/AIDS, helping partners defend themselves, respond to disasters, that is not woke or leftist or radical. It is a foundation of American foreign policy, and they are all under threat. And anytime we've asked for clarity about what the administration is doing, we've gotten very little. The programs that you've repeatedly pointed to as wasteful make up less than 0.5% of the total SFOP's budget. So we're talking about less than 0.5% of less than 0.5% of American discretionary spending. And if the deal was to immediately take all of those offending programs, eliminate them, and enact them, you would be pushing on an open door. But most of all, I want you to understand how important I think it is for the United States of America, for President Trump, for you as a secretary, for us to get to some rhythm of bipartisanship where the Article I branch works with you to enact an SFOPS bill. We are ready to do so, but we need some level of correspondence, interaction, transparency, and cooperation. Thank you.
Secretary Rubio.
Well, thank you. And I'm not going to give the written remarks. I'm just going to sort of walk you through this a little bit. That's the way these things are supposed to work, I hope. And let me first start out by saying what is the goal here? Because I think it's important, even though we're going to talk about spending and all of that, you're going to do your own appropriations process. We recognize that. But I wanted to explain to you the organization.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. So, look, we got some more details into this developing story here in San Diego. This is a live look at San Diego International Airport. So, from our content partners there in San Diego, CBS 8, a bomb threat has been reported in connection with the Hawaiian Airlines plane at the San Diego International Airport this morning. That's according to San Diego Harbor Police. Now, the plane had not taken off and was surrounded by emergency vehicles on the tarmac. Passengers were evacuated off the plane and loaded onto buses. According to Harbor Police, K-9 units are on the scene to aid in this investigation. Details, again, very limited. And again, as we get more information, we will continue to update you. But I just wanted to pop back on and give you this update. Again, a bomb threat is under investigation there at San Diego International Airport. And as far as we know, and according to our content partners there in San Diego, CBS 8, the plane had not taken off and was surrounded by emergency vehicles on the tarmac, and passengers were evacuated off the plane and loaded onto buses. And so as far as we know, no one was hurt. Everybody made it off safely, according to the reports. So that is a live look there. Once we, again, this is one of those things that with Live Impact News, we see a bunch of things happening live, and we were able to spot this, track down some information, and bring this to you live here on WCNC Plus. But you see a live look there. A lot is happening there on that tarmac. And from what I gather from, and let me make sure I refresh this, because I'm bouncing back and forth when it comes to making sure I get you enough information. So according to the NBC affiliate, NBC7 in San Diego, the unofficial flight tracking site FlightAware shows minimal delays and one cancellation there. So that is the latest they have. But if I jump back to our content partners, CBS 8 in San Diego, again, they're reporting a bomb threat has been reported in connection with a Hawaiian Airlines plane at the San Diego International Airport this morning time, this afternoon here on the East Coast, but morning over there in the West Coast, according to San Diego Harbor Police. Now, the plane, again, had not taken off and was surrounded by emergency vehicles on the tarmac, and people on the plane, passengers on the plane, were evacuated off the plane and loaded onto buses. So I see some folks coming down. It's hard to tell if these are, it appears these may be investigators, but because
I've seen people going on and off the plane.
So we would assume that those were investigators. Oh, let's go back to this hearing. There was somebody, it looks like there was a disturbance right there.
The best foreign aid is foreign aid that ends.
So, yeah, okay. Sorry for that, just kind of jumping around. But, again, with Live Impact News, we see a lot of things, and we try to get there as quick as possible. we were on the plane incident, the bomb threat incident in San Diego International Airport. And as the Senate hearing was happening, we saw a disruption going on. So we wanted to take you there live. So it looks like that disruption, and we brought some of that disruption there here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Well, it looks like that has calmed down now. The hearing will resume. Again, this is Secretary of State Marco Rubio testifying there in D.C. This is the Senate Foreign Relations budget hearing. Do we want to stay here, Carlene? They'll stay here. All right, let's listen in.
As we move forward in some of this, and as you'll see some of the features of the budget we've presented before you, one of the ideas we have is having a global health programs account. The other is having a consolidated humanitarian assistance account. And the combination of these two things will allow us to deliver aid as part of the package driven from the ground up. I said this at the previous hearing. One of the most important things I feel, one of the most useful things to me in my time at the department has been the cables. The cables that I get from ambassadors. We have gotten so many ideas from those cables. Will those ideas have ultimately made their way to me? Maybe. I don't know. But maybe months from now or weeks from now. I want more of that in the department, and I want to empower embassies to be able to make decisions about which programs we should be funding, where the money should be going. I want when an ambassador goes into a meeting for she or he to be able to say to them, here is a portfolio of things we can offer, which ones would make the most sense to you. So we're trying to accommodate that through the creation of these two funds. It's important to understand we're not walking away from foreign aid. We will still be the world's largest foreign aid donor by a lot. It won't even be close, but we want to target it more effectively. Another feature is this America First Opportunity Fund. Which frankly will allow us to be more nimble in providing funds for specific programs that arise outside the normal cycle of funding. And Syria, once again, is a great example. We don't have any money in the fiscal year's budget for Syria because, frankly, none of us thought we would be talking about helping the Syrian government 6 months ago or 8 months ago. But now we have an opportunity to do it. And rather than have to go through reprogramming and all kinds of shuffling, to have the flexibility at some level to be able to respond quickly to something like that, that might be multifaceted in the approach, is an important thing to consider as well as aligning it to other priorities that we have as an administration. So I do look forward to working with you because, frankly, I have to. You passed the appropriations bills, but also because I think it can be very constructive.
Thank you, Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say, first of all, welcome, Secretary Rubio. I hope that you look forward to working with us, not only because you have to, but also because you want to. And I keep wondering how it is for you to be on the other side of the dais. But we're very happy to have you in the position that you are. I do want to follow up and talk with you about the global health programs. I obviously share the goal of evaluating programs, reforming them to root out wasteful spending, reduce overhead costs, even question whether or not a particular program has achieved its objective and is no longer needed. However, I'm also mindful that U.S. international assistance plays a key role in helping us to respond to humanitarian crises, fight the spread of deadly diseases like Ebola, and project soft power. And that's why I'm concerned that the President's budget request proposes a cut of 62% below the enacted level of 2025 for global health programs. Are you concerned that if we cut back by that amount, that China is going to step in and pick up the terminated USAID health programs, particularly in Southeast Asia?
Well, let me first say China has no history in the past or even now. I know that there's been some talk about this, but they really have demonstrated no willingness or capability to deliver humanitarian aid at scale to anyone. Their aid is largely driven by loans, sometimes low interest or no interest loans, but nonetheless loans, and in other times interest, traditional loans. to trap nations. They also give you the money so that you hire their companies to do the work. But on the space of humanitarian, they are not a major player. As I said, even on humanitarian assistance, the United States dwarfs the next 9 or 10 countries on the list in terms of what we provide. And we intend for that to continue, and that as part of this budget. We'll obviously work with you to find what the number needs to be to fit the need. But I can tell you that one of the reasons why the number is so stark is because the reductions that happened at USAID transferred some of these programs over under state. And so now we have to accommodate that within our overall budget. And so we'll have to work with the committee to find out what the right number is to fit the need. But I will say that it cannot be, no matter what, I think we are living in a time where it's essential that we recognize that this is not a time of largesse. We are going to have to, in my view, limit how much we spend in general as a government, given the fact that just a few days ago we saw a downgrade to our debt. These are problematic things, and other nations need to step up and do more. It is frustrating to me to see how much money we invest in certain countries, albeit on what we term humanitarian or global health. But when you look at the other side of the ledger, all the business deals, all the critical mineral deals, all their votes at the United Nations are all aligned with China or Russia or Iran. And so I do think that has to be taken into account here. We are humanitarians. We cannot solve all of the world's humanitarian problems. There are many. We can contribute it, and we'll continue to be the largest contributor in the world. But I do think how we allocate the limited resources of our government has to somehow be viewed through the lens of the benefit to the United States, certainly in the mid to long term.
The administration also included Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, in its list of terminated programs. And you've always been a very strong advocate for that program, which has resulted in 1.1 billion children being immunized and averted more.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Happening right now, Charlotte City Council is swearing in its newest council member. This is Edwin Peacock to your left. Edwin Peacock III, rather, to your left. He's set to be sworn in. He's about to be sworn in right now. This marks the first time representing a district seat, but many in City Hall say his experience makes him well suited for the role. Let's take a listen into what's happening.
That I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina.
Let's repeat that.
Okay. I will be faithful and bear true alliance.
I will be faithful and true alliance.
To the state of North Carolina.
To the state of North Carolina.
And to the this is going to be bad for me. Constitutional powers.
And to the constitutional powers.
And authorities.
And authorities.
Which are or may be established.
Which are or may be established.
For the government thereof.
For the government thereof.
And that I will endeavor.
And I will endeavor.
To support, maintain, and defend.
To support, maintain, and defend.
The Constitution of said state.
The Constitution of said state.
Not inconsistent.
Not inconsistent.
With the Constitution of the United States.
Not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States.
And that I will discharge.
And that I will discharge.
The duties of my office.
The duties of my office.
As City Council Member of the City of Charlotte, North Carolina.
As City Council Member of Charlotte, North Carolina.
To the best of my knowledge.
To the best of my knowledge.
And ability.
And ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You are now sworn in.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Bye. Appreciate it.
All right. Now you have to sign a number.
All right. I will sign.
Let's see if this will push back here.
All right.
You'll sign down here, and then the clerk will take care of that. Do we need two?
One is for him and one is for our record.
All right.
There you go.
Very good.
And now you know that we will be doing this officially again on our next meeting. So that hopefully Edwin will have more time to think about this and decide whether or not he really wants to do it.
It's too late. It's too late.
To start now.
Okay. All right.
And I guess there's going to be some questions. We're going to take some photos. Ready?
Sure.
Yep. All right. So this is one of our team.
One of our team.
Yes,
okay.
Here we are.
Great.
Ed, come on. Ed.
Let's do one here and then we'll bring that in.
1, 2, 3.
All right. You hold that.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Perfect. We're good.
Thank
All
you.
right, Ed, come on. Can we do one more?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got plenty of film.
Okay, thanks, David.
All right, and 1, 2, 3. And again, and 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
All right.
Thank y'all.
So I don't.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Servant. Right now, happening live, Edwin Peacock III sworn in as Charlotte City Council member. Peacock, a former at-large council member and two-time mayoral candidate, was selected by the council to fill the vacancy left by council member Tark Bakari, who stepped down earlier this month to work for the Trump administration. We want to shift over now live to St. Louis, where a press conference is happening with city leaders, and we checked in with Walker Lawson. You saw the damage there from the tornado that swept through the area, the Midwest being hit hard by some deadly tornadoes. Let's listen in to the update there by the mayor and other city officials.
As well, I share that the concerns about the sirens are real, they are valid, and they are shared by me. And it is absolutely, we are doing our best to be transparent and forthcoming while also making sure that our focus is ensuring that it never happens again. And the safety and security and the response is our priority. We want to balance that, and we do want to answer your questions, and your questions absolutely, they're valid. They deserve an answer, and they will get one. I just want to point out that we are triaging a whole host of things right now, and we want to be sensitive to that as well. Thank you.
I understand. And then still a lot of unanswered questions from the public. Obviously, there's more questions other than the siren response. Cameron, just like Channel 4, the Post Dispatch, the mayor, we all have a lot of questions about why that failure happened. That's why we're going to continue to provide these briefings, even tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then as we have continued to evaluate, we might be holding another briefing later today. But please understand, while there's a lot of questions unanswered, there's still a lot of leadership that needs to get done too. And that's why we're trying to limit some of this information, just because there's a lot of information we need to still gather so we can distribute it to our community. Okay?
Mitch, if there's any burning other issues, topics that we haven't touched on, are there any other topics?
I mean, there are some small things. You know, FEMA's on the ground.
Yes.
They also had tornadoes on Friday. Why are they there? Do you know why they're there and not here?
And not here. I can't speak to that. I do know that we are making those asks. We're doing everything we can to make sure that they're here, and I do have confidence that our governor is doing the same. But why FEMA is there and not here, I can't answer that. I will say that our office has been in touch directly with the White House. I know our governor spoke to the president over the weekend. These things are in motion. Why we're not getting that, I don't know. It's heartbreaking to me as well, and I want to assure everyone that we are doing everything we can to get them here. And they will be here tomorrow.
For the next 3 days, you said?
The FEMA and the state SEMA, they will be here starting tomorrow for the next 3 days to do the evaluations. In order for FEMA to have the declaration, there has to be a pretty comprehensive evaluation of the damage. And that is what they're going to be here helping us do. We have outlined as much as we can. We've had the assessor's office here since Friday night, assessing the property damage. That's a big piece of it, so that FEMA can actually quantify just how extensive the damage is. We know how extensive it is. We see the damage on the ground, but it has to be quantified, and there are some procedural things that have to be done in order for that declaration to be finalized. Yeah.
Talk about the National Guard's role, like what they would be doing.
That is something that we are evaluating. We've been working with the folks here on the ground to I understand exactly what they can do and what the need is. We also know that the ask has to be very, very specific. So as we go through, we had to do the evaluations on the structures and that sort of thing. We're putting that together, and we hope to be able to communicate what that looks like, not only what they can do, what we need, and how those things are matched in the coming day or two. The evaluation?
I guess.
It's a little bit bigger than
just the one liaison who was here already?
Yes. There's a broader set of conversations that's been occurring over the past couple of days, and that is part of it, yes. Any other topics? We really don't want to try to not address them, but yeah, we appreciate
to see the worst damaged areas. What's your
Rachel, I can just tell you, the damage is so extensive. People have been so gracious to bring me into their homes, and There aren't words. Whole entire sides, fronts, backs, tops of homes are missing. People have wrapped their personal belongings in saran wrap, tarps. It is unbelievable what people are going through right now. There are no words to describe the feeling of hopelessness that people are. We are doing our best to bring resources as needed. We know we are simultaneously doing a Herculean effort and not doing nearly enough. It's not possible to address all the needs in our community. And all I can say is that I'm so grateful for the community, what we're pulling together, what we are pulled together, and what we will continue and need to pull together in the coming days, weeks ahead. The need is absolutely astronomical, and we're grateful for the generosity that's coming out of the woodworks to step up. It is needed. Make no mistake about it. The destruction, 8 miles just in the city, touching down. That is very, very unusual behavior for a tornado. This is a heavily populated area. These are people's homes. This is everything they own, open to the elements, and you cannot overstate the destruction, the damage that was done by this tornado. Thank you.
On the siren test, is it going to be citywide or is it just the?
It should be citywide.
Citywide,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serter, and there was an update by St. Louis leaders following some difficult scenes to see there in St. Louis as tornadoes swept through the Midwest. A tornado hitting St. Louis pretty hard. We saw a lot of that damage during Walker's live shot, and you see how emotional it has been for the city's mayor. She got choked up speaking during that press conference, describing what she's seeing: cars flipped over, homes destroyed, buildings destroyed, businesses destroyed. So definitely a tough go for folks there, specifically in St. Louis, but across the Midwest as they're dealing with some strong thunderstorms there as well. And again, we have WCNC Charlotte's Walker Lawson, who is there on the ground helping out our sister station there at KSDK there in St. Louis, giving us updates in real time and on air and on the stream as well. All right, so we want to shift back now to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing that is happening. This is a live look. This is Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. Now, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is having a hearing on the department's fiscal year budget with Secretary Marco Rubio. This is live in D.C. Let's take a listen in.
Is in our national interest?
I think that if it prevents them from having a nuclear weapon, that would be in our national interest.
Right. So dismantlement plus a 1, 2, 3 agreement. Get out of the enrichment business. And if you do that, you can have a 1, 2, 3 agreement. Is that a fair summary of where you're at?
Yeah, or something equivalent to it that allows them, if they want, to have a civilian nuclear program, but not the ability to enrich.
Count me in. I think that's very smart. You keep saying, and I was with you all weekend, you were great talking about, you want to end this war honorably and justly. And do you agree that the way we end the war in Ukraine with Russia could affect how China views what they do in Taiwan?
I think the way we end the war could impact how China views it. I think the continuity of this war will also impact it because it's draining resources from us and from our allies that could be spent on building up our capacities in the Indo-Pacific. So both can be true.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. When it comes to Russia getting to the table, do you think Putin's ready to make peace?
I think Putin will always cut the deal he thinks is in its best interest for the country, for Russia and for his view of the world. I think right now, frankly, he has said, here's the latest. He says they're going to submit a proposal that would lead to a ceasefire that would then lead to a broader negotiation. I think we will know from the context of that proposal where their mindset is and where they stand.
You keep telling people, rightly so, that the Senate you can't stop. I mean, you know, we want to work with you. These sanctions were designed to help, not hurt. I'm trying to help the president, give him leverage. To my Democratic colleagues, thank you for being on board. We're trying to get the right answer here. This is not a competition between us and the administration. It's trying to a coordinated effort to end the war that President Trump is right to want to end. I guess here's my question. We'll know in a couple of weeks whether or not they're serious. Do you believe that if there were tariffs on China for buying cheap Russian oil, that would make a difference toward Chinese policy regarding Russia?
At 500% tariffs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that has an impact on nations.
I agree. Do you agree that if China stopped buying oil from the shadow fleet, it would put a real dent in Putin's war machine?
I think it's widely understood, including by our European partners, and I remind them of this all the time when we were together with them, that there is no way that Russia could sustain its war effort without assistance from China. China has helped Russia as much as they can without getting caught.
Do you think Europe is serious about doing their part when it comes to sanctions on Russia and trying to find a solution to end this war?
Yeah, we actually saw we met with them this weekend in Rome, and they are on path and they are en route now to maybe as early as the middle part of this week, applying additional sanctions on Russia.
Thank you very much. I think Senator I think it's Merkley is what I've got. No, Coons.
Thank you very much.
There you are, Senator Coons. Senator Merkley. Peace is breaking out on the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Graham, Ranking Member Schutz, and good to be with you again, Secretary Rubio. I wanted to make sure that the point's been made, as I suspect it has been by my colleague, that reform to USAID and reform to some of the authorities and the spending in the legislation that we passed in the last Congress is something that could easily have been done with partnership with this committee and with Congress, and should have been done that way. I wanted to touch on a few things that you and I worked on that I think deserve continued support and that I think are important for us to sustain. Senator Graham and I worked to pass the Global Fragility Act in 2019. You were a co-sponsor. It was signed into law by President Trump. And it's designed to save literally billions of dollars by addressing root causes of terrorism in fragile countries. As you put it at the time, as the U.S. responds to humanitarian crises, we must address the factors driving instability and violence. It's both moral and international security to promote stable and prosperous countries, and I'm proud to introduce this legislation. I'm planning to work with Senator Graham on reauthorizing it this year. The primary implementing entity had long been the Bureau of Conflict Operations and Stabilization. That's a bureau that's been restructured. Do you still agree it's in our national interest to have a targeted strategy to address the root causes of terrorism? And will you work with us to sustain the capabilities we need in the State Department to continue the Global Fragility Act's work?
Yes, and let me add to that because it's a good example. Number one, part of the reorg, just because we got rid of an office named something doesn't mean the function goes away. It means that we want to drive that through the regional bureau. So a great example of global fragility, I keep going back to this over and over again, is Syria.
Yep.
And if we don't, if that fragility is not addressed, there's going to be terror. There already is. I mean, ISIS is already growing there and potentially growing even more dangerous. If there's a civil war in Syria, you're going to have an ungoverned space where multiple groups are going to break out and not just threaten the region, but ultimately potentially the homeland. So it's a great example of how global fragility can be applied to the real world, but we have to do it very quickly. We have to be able to act quickly in this regard, which is one of the things we hope to do by being able to drive this down to the regional and local levels.
I also work closely with Chairman Graham, with Chairman McCall, with Ranking Member Meeks, and over 100 co-sponsors of both parties to enact the U.S. Foundation for International Conservation. It was enacted through the NDAA. There's funding allocated to it. You stated in your confirmation on January 15th that this was the sort of public-private partnership that struck you as deserving of support, and I would hope you would move quickly to obligating the funds and appointing the board. Chairman Graham and I are also working on a similar bill that would address food insecurity, again through a public-private partnership, a foundation that would rely on as much private sector funding and philanthropy as government funding. Do you still support these foundations, and is this something you look forward to working with?
And we'll get you an answer. I mean, we'll get you a decision on that very quickly, which is what you're looking for, is us to go through and try to implement the law.
Yes.
I recall the plan correctly. We'll get to that fairly quickly. We've had a lot going on over the last 4 months, but we'll get to it, including 100 and something reports that we inherited that were overdue. We're working through those as well. But because you raised it here today, if you give me a few days, I'll get you an action on it.
Thank you. We have spoken about the MCC. The Millennium Challenge Corporation is a Bush-era initiative that used metrics and accountability, working against corruption and in long-term partnership with countries to give them an alternative to Chinese financing. As you've described it, and I agree, debt trap financing. There's current compacts active in countries like Indonesia, the Solomon Islands, Nepal, Kiribati, where it gives transparency and cost sharing. You are the chair of the board of the Millennium Challenge Corporation. I understand from our discussion this morning that you're aware it's in some transition. Can you just confirm it's going through reform and will not be shut down wholesale?
Yeah, I can confirm. We're on the board. We don't operate it, obviously. We're on the board, but it's not a State Department function. We are one of the board members, albeit the chair, and actually our deputy, Chris Landau, is serving in that role when I'm not available to be at these meetings and so forth. My understanding as of the latest updates that I've gotten with the work that's being done is it is undergoing a reform effort or streamline effort, but not a takedown effort.
I think it would be an unforced error for us to hand away the relationships and the competition with China that are metrics-based and transparent that the MCC has put in place, so I hope to work with you on that. Last, your testimony highlights an America First Opportunity Fund as a flexible and responsive account that will address waste in foreign assistance and be more agile. But at least as I see it in your proposal, the account replaces $9 billion of programs with a $3 billion account to cover everything from countering the PRC, countering Russia, aiding Jordan and others. Could you just briefly describe how you imagine that math working and how this fund being sufficient to meet a wide menu of needs?
Well, part of it is we found that some of these
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. It looks like that shot froze there at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing on a fiscal budget. We'll try to get back to that eventually when we get that shot back up. But for now, let's take you back live to the Karen Reed trial there in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Right now on the stand, that is Shannon Burgess, a digital forensic expert. He was on the stand yesterday testifying. He's back on there today. This is after having his credibility questioned by the defense. He's back on the stand. He returns back on the stand Tuesday for this trial. Burgess of the accident reconstruction biomechanics and digital forensics company Aperture testified Monday about data the prosecution hopes will pinpoint a timeline of when they believe Reed allegedly hit John O'Keefe with her Lexus. All right, so. Okay, so it looks like, as I was talking, it looks like, as Carlene mentioned, if you heard her, it looks like the trial went into a sidebar. So we want to go back to the Senate hearing that's happening right now. Let's take a listen in.
Obviously, there are two ways to prevent war and to maintain America's position in the world: hard power, soft power. Over my years here, the people that have spoken mostly about the importance of soft power have been generals who know the cost of war. So we're talking about saving money, and I'm all for that. Let's take a look at what it costs to have an actual war 37% of our GDP in World War II spent on defense, 13% in Korea, 9% in Vietnam. The Reagan buildup, about
All right, so it looks like that shot froze there from the Senate committee hearing. It's talking about the budget, the physical budget, and for that department. So, all right, so we have a press conference there. Do we know where this press conference is coming from? This is Louisiana. Is this regarding the escaped inmates? Correct. Okay. Again, this is live impact news. Things happen in real time. We see things in real time. So let's take you there live. This is a press conference happening live regarding the escaped inmates there in New Orleans. So just remember, if you've been watching the streams this entire afternoon, we took you to the New Orleans City Council meeting as they talked about the escaped inmates and the problems surrounding that. So here's another press conference regarding this and possible updates on the search efforts. Let's take a listen to it.
My understanding, and I'm still trying to verify this number at the prison, is that over 400 individuals on that docket may be in custody at the prison. That's almost a third to a fourth of the total census at the prison in that one judge's docket. So, you know, I'm going to be appealing to the Supreme Court to help manage this issue as well. I think this requires everybody who has the ability to contribute to solving this problem to contribute what they can. And so I certainly will be looking at what all the contributing factors are. We will be focusing in my criminal investigation on what criminal involvement there is, but at the end of the day, what we really want to do is make sure that this can't happen again, and that means that anybody who can contribute to solving that problem needs to be part of that.
And speaking of that, ma'am, right now as we speak, there's a very dramatic city council meeting that's going on. The city is, you know, kind of at odds with each other over just a really egregious lack of what the sheriff says, a lack of funding over years and years and years that has led this brand new, 10-year-old jail to be decrepit. Do you feel like the state and city partnership here has egg on its face at this point with how this was all managed over the years?
You know, look, I wouldn't agree with the description that this is a decrepit facility. It's not. And there are some issues with it, and there are some issues that I think the sheriff has raised. There is a lot of money that's used to fund this prison. I would like to take a look at the funding and compare it to other prisons that were running, local jails that were running around the state, look at what their population is, how much it costs to run that jail. You know, you can compare their numbers. Now, it's not apples to apples when you've got a rural facility compared to an urban facility. You've got to look at who they are, what they're being held for, what the nature of the crimes are that they've been accused of to understand their level of threat. This facility was built, as I appreciate it, and with an understanding that it was going to have some high threat individuals in it. So I don't think that it's fair to say that this is simply a minimum security prison. It's got to have features in it that will handle people who need higher security measures. How they were doing that inside the prison, I can't answer that yet. I did watch parts of that council hearing. I think that, you know, I'm someone who believes that fiscal transparency is a given. This is taxpayer money. It is a lot of money, and I think that, you know, we ought to be able to see exactly how that money is being spent. And I promise you that with all of the attention that is now being given to this, everyone's going to be looking at that. You know, I mean, it's not just going to be a city council sheriff discussion that happens month to month to month. I mean, everybody's looking at it, and the governor's audit team is going to have, I think, a significant thing to say about the running of the facility, the staffing of the facility, and the funding of the facility.
A few more. Just a few more.
I'm not going to, answer questions about that. I don't think it's appropriate for me to answer that question. I think that, I'm focused on my job right now, which is conducting an investigation inside the prison. And I will say that the sheriff has been cooperative from the beginning. I came in on Friday afternoon with my people. I have been very clear that I believe this investigation should be independent of the sheriff's department. But, there are some people there that are being very, very helpful. We need to understand what they do, why they do it, how they operate. I appreciate that cooperation, and so, I want to continue to facilitate a productive relationship with the sheriff. I know that she is addressing, the issues as best she can right now, and what that means for her in the future is not my concern right now.
2 more quick ones, y'all. Just 2 more.
Look, we're all the captain of our own ships, and I think she took responsibility at the hearing today and said, I take responsibility for what happened. That's appropriate. If it was me, I think you have to do that. You're the captain of your own ship.
Have you been in contact with the families of the 6 victims, or the 6 inmates, the victims? Has your office been in contact with any of them?
The inmates who escaped?
No, ma'am. The victims of those inmates that are still on the run.
No, I know that the Orleans Parish Police Department and the District Attorney's Office has been engaging quite a bit with victims related to the crimes of which these people are accused. I do intend to have my office engage on that as well. I want to make sure that those families feel like they're being adequately taken care of, that there are resources that are being provided to them. I will also have some outreach to some of the public officials. I'm going to meet with District Attorney Jason Williams this afternoon after this, and we're going to have a discussion about some things that I think are within his and my control in terms of case management and things like that on some of these cases. So, I think everybody needs to we need to be making sure that everybody who feels threatened by this directly because they have some direct involvement with the escapees is that their concerns are being addressed.
Gabby, then Katie. Gabby, then Katie, last one.
I know that the 4 inmates who have since been captured are in state facilities now. At least 3 of them are at Angola itself. Were you a part of that decision? And overall, do you think that that's the most place they can be?
I do think it's the most secure place that they can be. I think it's the appropriate place for them to be. I didn't make the decision about where they would be, but I certainly had an opinion that they shouldn't be back in Orleans Parish Prison, and that given their propensity to escape, that they should be held in the most secure place possible, and that's Angola.
Katie, last one.
Okay. Given you talked about how witnesses are concerned, families of victims are concerned. Some families have described themselves as going into hiding. Are you fearful for your safety as a result of these people being back on the street?
I'm not fearful for my safety. I am concerned about the safety of all of these individuals who have a direct relationship with these individuals' cases. I think that is a fair concern of theirs. I think all of the ADAs and the District Attorney's Office is also, there might be court officials and judges who also are on edge. That is obviously a fair concern for them. And so, I do want to make sure that all of those people feel like they have the resources that they need and that they are protected. As long as these individuals are out, they will be pretty edgy, and legitimately so. So, I'm going to do everything that I can to address those concerns. I know the governor's committed to that as well. I haven't seen anybody, quite frankly, who isn't. So, but I also am continuing to encourage all the public officials, the city council, the court system, the federal court system, the sheriff, the district attorney, we all need to be able to pull together to figure out what role we can play to address this problem and have a short-term plan, an intermediate-term plan, and a long-term plan to deal with this facility. It's not the first time that we've had issues. We all know that there are some known issues with this particular facility. So, it's got everybody's attention. We need to address the problem.
And finally, one thing, I really want to ask.
Okay, folks, live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Vanessa Rufus taking over here in the studio. We've been listening into this live update from New Orleans regarding the inmate escape that happened Friday. It sounds like officials are really digging deep into what might have gone wrong with the situation. Of course, as we've reported on before here on Live Impact News, there have been some questions about how quickly the community was notified of this escape. So we know that some council members out there are attempting to draft up new policy regarding notification when there is some sort of jail escape. There's also been a lot of questions about the infrastructure there, faulty locks, and so there would be some, of course, discussion about how to shore up the actual infrastructure. Quick update here. We'll remember, of course, 10 folks escaped from the jail. At this point, 6 remain at large. And there's also now been an arrest made regarding a maintenance worker there at the jail. Apparently, somebody there is accused of turning the water off to a toilet that was covering a hole in a cell wall, which did allow those 10 men to get out of the jail. So more on this to come, of course. But for now, here on Live Impact News, we want to bring it back home. We are, of course, talking about weather as one of our big topics of the day. We do want folks to be weather aware as we go into the evening here and overnight hours into tomorrow morning. So we want to bring in meteorologist Becca Birdsall to talk a bit more about what folks can expect from the weather as we get into the evening here. So you were saying you were tracking some alerts which might have expired at this point, but it sounds like we're not totally clear as far as potential impacts, right?
Yeah, this is just the first round. It's not even the main round that's going to come later on tonight, especially through early Wednesday morning, which is what we are weather alert for. It's really the isolated showers and storms that we're going to see now until 10 o'clock that do have the potential and the fuel to turn strong to severe. So that's exactly what we were seeing over towards Lancaster County, just the southern tip of it, especially over towards Heath Springs. We did have that active severe thunderstorm warning just about a half hour ago for quarter-sized hail, which is basically 1 inch in diameter and 60-mile-per-hour wind gust. And that has moved off to the east. You can see severe thunderstorm warning has been canceled. However, still a cluster of thunderstorms as it continues to push off to the east. And it's headed right over towards Chesterfield County, and a lot of lightning and heavy downpours associated with it. So not a severe thunderstorm warning, and this is the only current downpour that we have from the mountains into the metro. However, there is going to be a chance for hit or miss thunderstorms pretty much from now all the way through the evening hours. This is all even before the main round comes. The main round is currently impacting places past Nashville, now over towards London, Kentucky, and headed right over towards Knoxville, Tennessee, where I believe that is the area that does have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings as well as an active tornado warning, it looks like, just before that North Carolina state border. What you see in orange, those are considerable severe thunderstorm warnings, meaning some large size hail and wind gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour. And that purple, that is an active tornado warning, again, I believe impacting places like Knoxville as this continues to push off to the east. And you can see all of that lightning associated with this. That is all out ahead of that cold front, and that's what's going to be pushing our way. Now, generally, warm front is lifting up across the area. That's going to rise up our dew points, bringing us a lot of juice and storm fuel for the atmosphere. It's also going to warm our temperatures up as well. So as these storms continue to move off to the east, they're generally going to be weakening as they push from the mountains into the metro, as they lose a little bit of that storm fuel, especially as the sun does end up setting later on tonight. However, still going to be watching for them to hold together. If they do hold together, strong to damaging wind gusts are going to be the main concern, with heavy rain, of course, frequent lightning, and can't rule out an isolated tornado as well, with the main time frame just after midnight through about 6 a.m. on Wednesday. Again, going to be on guard for an isolated tornado, a large hail, and especially damaging wind gusts upwards of 50 to 60 miles per hour. When we combine that with heavy rainfall, that is when we have the concern for downed trees and down power outages, but it's just going to be more isolated and spotty in nature. The big severe weather outbreak for today is going to be off to the west, where you see that red shading. That includes a big big portion of the southeast as well as Tennessee over towards Kentucky, and that's what's currently producing all those severe thunderstorm warnings, again approaching that North Carolina state border, but still right now over towards Kentucky and Tennessee. Like I mentioned, this is expected to gradually weaken out as it moves from the mountains into the metro. That's why we're under a medium threat west of I-77 and a low threat on the severe weather scale east of I-77, again for all modes of severe weather like I mentioned. It's going to be a muggy afternoon. Again, hit or miss thunderstorms, but you can see those dew points will be rising in the upper 60s. That's going to provide, again, a lot of storm fuel for these storms to actually maintain its strength, even though it's going to be the most stable part of the day coming in the morning hours. For today, you can expect high temperatures, mainly it's the lower to middle 80s, but with that heat index value probably feeling more like the middle to upper 80s out there. So if you are headed, I know the Charlotte Knights are at home all week starting today. If you're headed that way, first pitch at 6:35. Just keep that WCNC app handy so you can track those showers and storms in real time. Certainly not going to be a washout this evening. Futurecast showing just that possibility for dodging showers and thunderstorms through the evening hours. A couple of them could be turning strong to severe, but the main line coming just after midnight, again weakening out as it pushes across the metro. By 8 o'clock, most of us will have dried off. So this is an overnight event, which is why it is important to have those notifications on and alerts on before you go to bed, just in case of a severe or tornado warning gets issued for your area. And then we're going to be looking forward to a drier end of the work week. So for tomorrow, yes, the first part of the day, certainly wet and stormy, but by the afternoon, we'll see highs break out to the middle 80s with lots of sunshine and turning windy as well. Dew points are going to remain high for today, again providing some storm fuel and juice for the atmosphere, but after that, behind that cold front is going to be some much drier and some much comfortable air on the way. So that second cold front that we're going to be watching, that will eventually push across the area, not only going to be bringing cooler, drier air, but it's also going to ramp up our winds. So Thursday, 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts in the mountains, and over 30 can be expected just here in the Charlotte metro. Again, that will be happening Thursday afternoon and evening. In this 7-day forecast, you can see those temperatures drop into the middle to upper 70s by Friday, and will continue to stay cooler than average, upper 70s all the way through this Memorial Day weekend, really with minimal rain chances between Sunday and Monday. Should be great for any outdoor activities at this point. So yes, we've got a weather alert today and early tomorrow morning, but we do have some better days ahead on the way.
Now, Becca, our friends over in Knoxville right now are actually on the air in continuous coverage with what looks like a tornado warning. So you're actually saying that this is part of the system that eventually will be coming our way. And just so you know, we've popped that up for folks, the coverage over at WBIR. This is the same thing, right? That's going to eventually be here in Charlotte?
Yes, that's actually one of the first graphics that I showed on satellite radar. What was looking like a tornado warning over towards the Knoxville area. That's exactly what's headed our way. So again, generally this is expected to weaken out as Tennessee is under that high risk for severe weather. So we are under that low to medium threat, especially as these storms roll through from the mountains into the metro. But yes, they are packing a punch, and it's going to be a long night ahead for areas in Tennessee. And oh, yep, active tornado warning up for the Knoxville area. So again, that's why we are weather alert. Certainly not going to be as active as off in Tennessee, but certainly something to pay attention to going into tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally, I feel like, been pretty busy out in the Midwest, and then obviously as systems move towards us, they seem to peter out a little bit more, but they've been dealing with a lot, I feel like, out in particularly St. Louis, where I know we actually sent a crew to help our news team out there, just because, I mean, the devastation out there in some areas, you know, just unbelievable.
Yeah, the life of property and just people within these storms has been very sad and certainly eye-opening for people. And I know sometimes people who get anxiety with storms, the good news is for us, it's not going to be nearly as intense or strong as they push our direction, but just certainly something that you have to pay attention to, and why you should be weather alert and have those notifications turned on, especially overnight. It's the overnight storms that can really catch people by surprise, and I know that was a big issue for the Midwest as well.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you hear the term nocturnal tornadoes, when you hear the potential of nocturnal tornado, I mean, that's super concerning, because you can have folks who are asleep. Maybe they've got their phones on silent.
Yep.
So I think, one of the things that has been beneficial, at least for me, is just to go into my phone settings and just make sure I know when I get the alerts, because sometimes you just don't know, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I have Do Not Disturb on my phone.
Yeah.
I'm really bad about it. A weather radio is also a great tool as well. It's going to alert you no matter what. It will be loud, it will wake you up, but it will certainly grab your attention, especially in case of an emergency.
Okay. Is there a particular time frame tonight where our meteorology team will kind of regroup and look at new data coming in just to kind of see how the system might be developing as the day goes on? Because obviously not an expert, but sometimes if we don't get a lot of sunlight and heating past a certain time, things tend to kind of fizzle out a little bit more.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think especially later on tonight, watching Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, he's going to have that latest information. We get refreshed radar data frequently, especially looking ahead towards futurecasts. So watching later on this evening would certainly be a good tool. And Chris Mulcahy in the morning hours as well will give you an exact look of how these storms are coming and rolling through. And there is going to be a toss with Brad and Chris early on in the morning. So in case there is a tornado warning that comes in at 1 or 2 in the morning, they will be there to track it.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate our weather impact team, of course, you included, and thank you so much for coming on here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We'll just remind folks at home that we do watch these systems as they come from other parts of the country. As we alluded to a little bit earlier, we were on the air here streaming live on Live Impact News on Friday night when those storms were moving through St. Louis. And I mean, some of the coverage that our team out there brought to you all, I mean, it was just absolutely heart-wrenching, but it was truly good coverage in the sense that we were seeing all the angles. There were crews in all neighborhoods, and I felt like we were really giving folks a sense of a presence of what it felt like to be there on the ground and some of the damage. And unfortunately, as Becca alluded to, the fact that there was loss of life with these storms in recent days. And so this is just the reason why we want to keep you weather aware and alert to these sort of systems. As you see here, a live look at that radar in Knoxville, Tennessee, where they are tracking the potential of a tornado, and knowing that the system eventually will be coming our way. We just want to make sure that no one is caught off guard, that you're able to plan and keep your family safe and make all the preparations that you need. I'm going to check in quickly now. Jeb, our producer, we're getting some good audio from BIR. Maybe we'll listen in here. We'll give you folks a second to kind of hear from our team in Knoxville about the situation. Looks like we've got a couple of warnings that are underway. So let's listen in live right now.
Up in your area. Don't want to forget about y'all just because we have this tornado warning, but just wanted to touch on it real quick. I'll send it back over to Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell at the weather wall for another update here.
All right, Cassie, thank you so much. Yes, those storms, we're at the wall now, continuing to track to the east-northeast at 35 miles per hour. The worst part of this line, the southern end, is a tornado warning that has been moving right over Oak Ridge. Now, again, we have radar indicated tornado warning, but enough clues and signs in the atmosphere of rotation that a tornado could be on the ground with little or no warning, maybe just off the ground. That's what you hope for. That's a funnel cloud. That's the difference in definition between a funnel cloud, not touching anything connected to the ground, and a tornado, obviously, touching something on the ground. That could be the tips of the trees. That would qualify. It's got to be something on the ground. So we have a radar indicated tornado warning, but damage and winds, whether it's a tornado or a severe thunderstorm, either way, damage and winds appears likely from Oak Ridge to Clinton. That's why we're bringing you more of the extended coverage right now. Also, as you already know, look at the last week or so, right? The atmosphere's been waving a big flag and a clue that severe weather is more probable in this type of pattern of what we've been seeing. So that's why we want to make sure that you are safe, prepared, stay weather alert throughout the afternoon. We'll have another chance for severe storms into this evening. Matter of fact, this is the first line. We're actually going to get a several hours break. Just a quick note on that later on this afternoon and this evening, and then a line of potentially damaged winds is possible later on tonight. So we'll focus on that later. This is the first wave. Damaging winds, 60-mile-per-hour winds, still broad rotation indicated from Oak Ridge and working its way towards Solway. So that's continuing to be a signal here that we're monitoring and tracking as those storms continue to move off to the east-northeast. We wear these little things and they pop out of your ear sometimes. But that's a look at that rotation that's coming from Oak Ridge and continuing to, if it holds together, matter of fact, there you go. So that's a little bit, see the red showing up here? That's a little bit more of a rotation signal, and that's why we continue to have that tornado warning that's continuing to move into the Knox County area shortly, coming across the Solway Bridge here in a moment, Edgemore Road, and continuing to move just by Oak Ridge now, and continuing to track along the turnpike, and also, again, as you go from Oak Ridge up toward Clinton, and continuing to move in your direction. Thank you, Cassie, for zooming on in. So Highway 95, yeah, here's a look at that broad rotation. This is just from the last few moments. Thank you, Cass. That's very good information. You can go back just the last few frames. You can kind of see how it's developing. Yeah, and you kind of see, it's like a lobe, isn't it? That's what it looks like, right? You got winds going away from radar on the north side, and winds toward the radar on the south side. It's like a little bit of an elongated lobe right now.
Moving now to our 3-box here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We're going to keep the audio in full here of the severe weather coverage from Knoxville, Tennessee. And then we've put on now for you on the screen up at the top live images from the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Oversight. This is actually hearing some testimony regarding threats to ICE operations. And then in the bottom right, this is going to be the Senate budget hearing where we've been seeing some questioning specifically regarding the State Department budget requests, looking at some of the dramatic cuts, and also questioning, we're seeing in some cases, Secretary Rubio on some of the policies that have changed, including the refugee status granted to white South Africans entering the country. So as we see anything big popping up, of course, we'll transition to one of these live feeds, but we'll leave you once again in full Knoxville, Tennessee, severe weather coverage.
Some of those landmark features as you track, from Milton Hill and going up just northeast of Oak Ridge toward Clinton area. So the very heavy rainfall, by the way, as well, but downpours and also damaging winds likely. Look at all the core of the lightning. Cassie showed you the hail core a moment ago. It was slightly less, and that is a little bit of a good sign, actually, because sometimes if those storms, we talked about this a moment ago, they grow, they mature, and then they collapse and literally come rushing down very quickly. That's when you can have all that wind energy coming down. But if we get the hail core that's starting to decrease a little bit, that can be a clue. But also a lot of times the storms, if you think of like a jellyfish, if you will, kind of pulsing up and down, that's a lot of times what severe storms do. They pulse up, they pulse down, they kind of oscillate, vacillate, if you will, back and forth, back and forth. So that's what we're looking at with that potential severe storm. It may just be cycling, and that's what a lot of times severe storms do. They cycle up and they cycle down. There's the latest update. Not much change in the hail core, thankfully, but still we could be at least looking at quarter to maybe penny-sized hail as now that storm continues to track to the east-northeast. It's 3:17 right now. The tornado warning is in place until 3:45. It does include Anderson, Knox counties. It also includes Roane County. Now, of course, moving into more of Anderson County, including Morgan County, but now we're focusing on Anderson into Knox County, and damaging winds where you see the brighter blue colors right here. That's winds that on our radar scale, estimates by Doppler radar of 60 miles per hour or greater. 58 mile per hour winds or higher are severe. And quarter-size hail or larger. If you take a coin, and by the way, if we happen to have hail and you can safely get that, always put a coin in your hand, the palm of your hand with the hail, and that will give us a good idea of the hail size. Thank you, Cass. There's the velocity. That confirms 62 mile per hour wind. So then when you see that lighter shade of blue, that's what we're looking at. That's kind of that lower threshold of severe winds. So if it's green, that's 40 to 50 mile per hour winds, et cetera, et cetera. So right up here, again, this is where we're seeing the Oliver Springs Highway, again, tracking up toward the Marlowe community, actually, excuse me, that's Marlowe community here, Oak Ridge Highway, Highway 95, I should say, excuse me, tracking up toward Clinton. And there's the Bull Run Steam Plant, again, and also Experiment Station. You got Solway School. Now, this database has a lot of older schools in there, so some of these, that may or may not be there right now. It's just a quick side note. But, of course, this is going to be tracking toward the Bull Run Steam Plant, Solway area, Highway 95, Melton Hill, be in your safe place right now. Now, if you're in Karnes, again, of course, from Oak Ridge Highway to Karnes, you need to be in your safe place coming right down Highway 62 and Oak Ridge Highway from into the Karnes community. It's going to be in the Claxton High School area shortly. About to come up the Clinton Highway, the big hill and all the curves. Yeah, here's Clinton Highway right here. So that's where that severe storm is right now, crawling up the hill and about to come down into Knox County. So Powell, Karnes, up toward Paulette, again, you need to be prepared to be in your safe place quickly. It's from Clinton to Oak Ridge right now. Very heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and by the way, if you can safely relay any storm damage reports to the Channel 10 newsrooms, news tips at WBIR.com. News tips at WBIR.com. You can also upload storm pictures safely. We don't want you to be out in the heart of the storm right now, but safely upload your pictures, information on our 10 News app, and you can go do that as well. But if you relay that information to our newsroom safely, we can relay that to our viewers, because right now it's radar indicated. We've got storm spotters out there, National Weather Service in Morristown, and everybody's monitoring, tracking the storm, seeing what type of damage it possibly could be producing. Hopefully, not too much. I'm certainly hoping for the best here, right? But we do have the potential for damaging winds as it continues to track this storm. Now, again, the National Weather Service has taken off Morgan and Roane County, so now we just have Anderson and Knox County in the tornado warning until 3:45, as it is tracking off to the east, slightly north of east, but pretty much east at 35 miles per hour. So Karnes on the southern end of this track, and again, the updated track is just north of Knoxville. It does include Fountain City into the Halls area. So Halls Crossroads right here, of course Powell, Emory Road corridor, and again Oak Ridge Highway from Oak Ridge to Karnes, Clinton Highway from Clinton to Powell, and also coming down eventually Interstate 75 coming out of Anderson County, Raccoon Valley Road, Paulette, and continuing down toward the Emory Road area. So these are the areas from Powell to Rocky Top. Again, all areas in between, that's the heart of the northern part of that storm. We have other severe storms that we've also been tracking up into Kentucky, and again, continuing up into Campbell County. So don't want to forget about you that we are tracking those storms, but this is the strongest part of this line on the southern end, which incidentally, a lot of times you may see that as well. The strongest wind energy is feeding into the southern part of this line. So this southernmost storm on this line is absorbing most of the wind energy. See how it's nothing south of it? Yeah, all the wind energy is a lot of it is being absorbed within this storm right now. A new severe thunderstorm warning, we'll see if that has a tornado tag, just popping up there. That still includes the Oak Ridge into the Powell and Karnes area as it tracks eastward. Thank you, Cassie, for winding out. We got that severe thunderstorm warning that's going to continue just east of London up into Knox County, Kentucky.
Folks, live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We're going to pivot away from the severe weather coverage. We're watching this out of the Knoxville area, of course, and we will monitor this in the background. But we want to turn our attention now to this hearing underway in D.C. We told you before, this is the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Oversight, and they're looking at threats to ICE operations. We wanted to listen in live right now and get an idea of what some of this testimony entails.
But the impact of politics on a mission that should universally be supported, enforcing the law in the effort to safeguard the country. Inept policies and political positions of sanctuary cities, for example, which fly in the face of common sense when it comes to protecting law-abiding citizens, also creates more dangerous conditions for federal agents enforcing the immigration laws of the country and for all of law enforcement for that matter. Political positions of not allowing state and local law enforcement to support ICE operations, no cash bail, and the release of violent repeat offenders, including those in the country illegally who should be prioritized for deportation, creates a protective shield for the most dangerous criminals from other countries in the U.S. illegally. It also endangers lives when politicians alert their communities of ICE operations or when they offer guidance to illegal migrants regarding how to evade ICE. It also further promotes to the community that in some cases they may do the same. There must be bipartisan agreement when it comes to the protection of the country and support for those who enforce the rule of law, for no civilized society has survived without it. There must also be universal consensus that despite political policy objections, elected officials at all levels must be held accountable when crossing the red line of obstruction and assault of law enforcement officials. What we saw in New Jersey at Delaney Hall Detention Center was not congressional oversight. It was an ambush, and it was violent obstruction, and it cannot be tolerated by this body. As I've discussed, there are enough threats against this country, against law-abiding citizens, and the ability to safely conduct ICE operations. There should not be additional threats originating from elected leaders against those doing their jobs, a job that the American people voted overwhelmingly in favor of them doing. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marino. Mr. Mikowski, you may begin.
Good morning, Chairman Vandrew, Ranking Member Crockett, Chairman Jordan, and Ranking Member Raskin. I'm honored to appear before you today. My name is Scott Mikowski, and I proudly served this nation for 2 decades as a law enforcement officer and with the United States military. I retired from service from DHS in 2018 as a Deputy Field Office Director in New York City. My views are personal, shaped by 24 years of frontline duty and 34 years in the U.S. Army. Today, I speak not just from experience, but from urgency. ICE detention centers and ERO's mission are not optional. They are essential to the rule of law. Without them, our immigration system and our communities collapse into chaos. ERO's mission is straightforward: protect communities by arresting, removing individuals who pose threat to public safety or who violate federal immigration law. I spent years targeting the most dangerous elements in our nation: MS-13 gang members, drug traffickers, human rights violators, foreign fugitives. These were not theoretical threats. These were real people with real histories of violence and harm. Operations like Operation Matador and All In were successful because they were strategically designed, intelligence-driven, and supported by strong federal infrastructure and funding, including detention beds. Immigration detention is not punitive. It is a lawful tool to ensure compliance with immigration proceedings and final orders of removal. Yet 1.4 million of those ordered removed are still roaming free, a population that drives the need for more bed space. Over 60% of ICE's detained population is held under mandatory detention laws. Individuals with criminal records, flight risks, and even those that pose threat to national security. Detention is about guaranteeing aliens appear in court and that their rights are respected. It's also important to note that attorneys, family members can visit families and provide support, and that removal orders, once lawful and final, can be carried out safely, responsibly. Effective GPS monitoring, known as the ISAP program, is useful to ensure high-risk cases are able to be held in detention when detention beds are fully utilized. Now let's talk about Newark. What occurred at Delaney Hall in Newark recently was not civil disobedience, it was chaos. I've seen this before in New York. I personally witnessed a high-profile arrest spiral into pandemonium when protesters, misinformed and misled, physically blocked a medically necessary EMS transfer. They endangered the detainee's life, the officer's life, the general public's life, and ICE personnel. The Newark protest, which led to the arrest of sitting Mayor Ras Baraka, echoed that same recklessness. These actions just don't disrupt operations. They escalate risk, threaten lives, and turn lawful enforcement into a spectacle. Protest is a constitutional right. Interfering with lawful enforcement is not. Local non-cooperation laws, including sanctuary city policies, compound this threat. When local authorities refuse to share information or deny access, it drives enforcement into uncontrolled environments, homes, streets, workplaces. And that's where the danger really multiplies. It also increases costs and delays removal while weakening victim protections, intelligence sharing, and court coordination. Consider this. Nearly 8 million aliens are on the non-detained docket today. Fewer than 50,000 are in custody. When we demonize detention or defund its alternatives, we paralyze the system. We hand over the reins to not justice, but chaos. To the members of the subcommittee, I urge you to look beyond the rhetoric. The men and women of ICE are doing a job that was mandated by Congress. Acting Director for ICE, Todd Lyons, has been relentless in his efforts atop an agency that was abolished from within by the last administration. He's maximizing limited resources to enforce law again, as Congress intended. Thank you.
We wanted to break in quickly here, and on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, of course, always wanted to bring you the latest as it's coming into our newsroom. Wanted to share that we do have an update on the Rock Hill School Superintendent search. You'll remember back in January, the prior superintendent, Tommy Schmolze, resigned. He had already indicated that he was looking to retire, and then the district essentially said that they wanted an earlier departure for him so they could have a longer transition period to potentially this new superintendent here. So she's being called a finalist, and this is Dr. Deborah Elder. She currently serves as Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer of the Iowa State Department of Education. And at this point, it looks like it is not formal, but it is pretty close. They're basically at the point where they're in contract negotiations, and the board essentially will formally approve the contract at one point, and they do plan to finalize Dr. Elder's hiring as superintendent come May 28th, so just a few days from now. Once again, this is the potential new Rock Hill School Superintendent. Looks like we're pretty close here to this being finalized. Dr. Deborah Elder. Okay, with that, we want to send you back to our live feeds here. Of course, we're listening in full with our audio to this ICE operations hearing inside the U.S. House.
And this sort of narrative needs to be stopped. The White House is driving directives and policy through political theater. This is short-sighted and dangerous. It stirs backlash that makes it harder for ICE to go after actual threats, violent offenders, cartel members, and traffickers. And it doesn't stop there. The administration is pulling in officers from other agencies from across the federal law enforcement, CBP, and the Department of Homeland Security, creating gaps. And those officers are not highly skilled or trained in interior immigration enforcement. That weakens our border security and turns immigration enforcement into a shell game. Worse still, ICE is now expected to take on and manage a vast expansion of cooperation and oversight of local law enforcement carrying out immigration enforcement. This expansion creates confusion, legal risk, and potential for real harm. It expands the administrative burdens on ICE officers and takes them away from their public safety operations. All this is stressing our resources and making the system more chaotic. Beds in detention centers are limited. When they're filled with non-criminals, that space isn't there for dangerous offenders. We clog the system with cases that go nowhere because many of these individuals can't even be removed. They're protected by law, have claims pending, or come from countries that won't take them back. It's not enforcement, it's theater. It's a churn that misleads the public, burns out the workforce, and accomplishes very little. Let me be clear. I support vigorous enforcement within ICE. However, strength comes from strategy, not rounding up the wrong people for the wrong reasons. When ICE is turned into a blunt political tool, officers are the ones who suffer, much like we saw at Delaney Hall. They're the face.
All right, we will return you to our live feeds in just a moment, but quickly here on Live Impact News, we wanted to break in with some brand new information we just got regarding this ongoing saga with Charlotte City Council. You'll remember there have been some concerns raised by some council members about potential corruption and concerns with how a possible or alleged settlement between council or the city and CMPD Chief Johnny Jennings might have been done. We have just found out that the state auditor has confirmed that he will be looking into the city council settlement, this potential settlement. So there was an email that was sent to Mayor Vi Lyles. I'm going to read part of it for you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read part of it. And it says, "Dear Mayor Lyles, constituent requests and recent reporting involving Charlotte City Council have raised serious concerns regarding the potential disbursement of public dollars outside of the public view. It is my understanding there's a possibility that as much as $100,000 to $300,000 in public dollars may have been given to Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Chief Johnny Jennings for a legal settlement that may have been entered into by the City Council. This is only what has been gathered by the Auditor's Office from news reports, social media, and conversation. The truth of the matter remains unclear." So it goes on to say that they're going to be looking into this on behalf of the citizens of North Carolina and the nearly 1 million people who call Charlotte home. The North Carolina Office of the State Auditor will be investigating this matter. So there'll be questions we're seeing about how much money has been paid, if any, whether the payment exists, where did the money come from, and there will be other questionings as well. So that's the very latest in this situation. Once again, we've reported extensively on some of these concerns raised by a council member, and you can find some of this prior reporting, by the way, because it's somewhat convoluted, but you can find this on our website, WCNC.com, and inside the WCNC Charlotte mobile app. Be sure, of course, we'll be following the very latest, what's to come following this letter. We'll have a team looking into this, and we'll have this for you on WCNC Plus as we go on throughout the evening. All right, with that, we want to turn back to our live feeds here, once again, listening in full to the House operations hearing, ICE operations hearing, with some testimony still underway.
From across the border here, the background check we didn't really go back to their home country. So how do we eventually identify those? In other words, we're looking for crimes they committed in the United States, but we don't know if from Guatemala, wherever they came from. How is it that we eventually figure that out, and why is it that we don't know when they're coming? Mr. Bukowski or Mr. Arthur, either one, Moreno, whoever may have the answer to that.
Well, the problem has been the lack of thorough vetting for any of these illegal migrants that have been allowed to come into the United States. So never mind the countries of origin that oftentimes can't be verified. We don't even know who these individuals are. And we know that trickles down all the way to the unaccompanied minors. With the lack of DNA testing that was done away with early in the Biden administration, we now have, well over 350,000 that are missing within the interior of the country. So this becomes a guessing game now for authorities who are trying to rectify this system under the Trump administration. It's challenging. And then when you finally do discover the countries of origin, sometimes they don't want to accept these illegal migrants back.
One thing I found fairly interesting is when I went to the border, we saw thousands of IDs thrown down south of the border. So in other words, folks coming in, they had an ID in hand and they tossed it on the ground before they come across. And talking about the 350,000 children that the Biden administration lost, we don't know where they're at, what they're being trafficked into. But I had an individual who came across, he was 31 years old. He identified as an unaccompanied minor and raped a 14-year-old girl in a restaurant, in a restroom. And he already had a criminal record, but it was amazing to me that we didn't know his record when he came here. But then when you go see the border and you see all these thousands of IDs laying across that southern border, they don't want you to know who they are when they're coming here. And so, Mr. Arthur, why are these ICE detention centers, why are they so very important?
ICE detention is absolutely crucial for the enforcement of the law. ICE detention serves the two purposes: one, ensuring that individuals will show up for their immigration proceedings and the removal, but more importantly, to ensure that individuals who pose a danger to the community aren't allowed to be in the community while we go through that process. In fact, any individual who is eligible for bond can ask for bond if they don't have a crime. They can ask for bond from an immigration judge. I heard thousands of these cases. If they didn't pose a danger to the community and they weren't a flight risk, they were eligible for bond. Otherwise, they'd be detained because they're not going to show up.
Mr. Bukowski, you said you retired in 2018 from ICE. What was it like then compared to what you've heard from your colleagues in the last few years? How does the morale, what's going on, and what are they seeing on the streets?
And thank you for the question, sir. My experience was ICE officers are out there every day doing a job that Congress mandated. It's codified. I mean, there's funding for it. There's directives that come directly from Congress. And the men and women are out there every single day. And
so when you say codified, it's the law.
Yes, sir.
And so it always amazes me that how when we're enforcing certain laws, everybody comes up in arms. But to me, it's just a matter of we are trying to enforce the laws on the books. You guys, the officers on the street are trying to do what Congress has mandated. So what are you seeing with the morale now? Was it better? I assume it would have been better in 2018.
Yes, sir. They felt under the last administration they were totally abandoned, left out to dry. It was a field day. They weren't doing their jobs. They were sitting there. Nobody really cared. Meaning the people there felt like ICE was literally abolished without an actual order from Congress abolishing ICE.
So I'm running out of time, but so the same party that wanted to defund the police have basically attacked ICE for doing their job.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Alabama leads back. I will recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a lot of people out here in the audience, and if you came in support, to show your support for Representative LaMonica McIver, would you stand up, please? Okay, that looks like around 60 folks. Thank y'all for coming, and you may be seated. And let the record reflect, Mr. Chairman, the vast number of people who came in support of Representative LaMonica McIver.
Without objection.
The Trump administration has weaponized justice, using the Department of Injustice to carry forward an assault on liberty. Trump has threatened and intimidated a number of lawyers and powerful law firms into submission. He has put powerful institutions of higher learning under his thumb, and he has forced powerful media companies to bow down and kiss his ring. Now he's threatening and trying to intimidate his adversaries in elective office. Last month, Trump's Department of Injustice arrested a female judge doing her job at the courthouse in Milwaukee. They then arrested the mayor of Newark, in the same city that he leads. And now, yesterday, they have filed charges against a member of the House of Representatives. And today, we are engaged in a pre-planned hearing entitled, quote, examining threats to ICE operations, end quote, while producing a highly prejudicial, expertly edited video published to taint the jury pool and shape a false narrative on Representative McIver's actions. MAGA Republicans are using this hearing to justify the charges against her. And in support of the charges, they publish more video that demonizes people being held in private, for-profit ICE detention facilities. What is really happening is that Trump and his MAGA enablers are misusing their positions of power to prosecute people who refuse to lay down and get run over as they assault our liberties. And they are trying to intimidate members of Congress from performing our duties. That's why we are really here today. Last night, Trump's personal attorney, who he appointed to be interim United States Attorney for New Jersey, blatantly abused her authority to target a sitting Congresswoman who had been roughed up by armed, mask-wearing ICE agents, males. This interim U.S. attorney targeted my colleague, but just because Representative McIver had the audacity to do her job rather than taking the Trump administration's word that everything was fine. Members of Congress have the legal authority to visit ICE facilities so that we can perform oversight. It's one of the things we are elected to do. But this administration has become increasingly authoritarian and will not tolerate anyone asking questions. That's why Trump and my Republican colleagues call for the impeachment of any judge who rules against this administration. It is why the Trump administration targets students who expressed dissent. And it's why Trump muzzled the big law firms that previously stood up for civil liberties and have now agreed to stay quiet and do his bidding. The Trump administration continues to abandon the Constitution, and the Department of Justice continues to politicize the pursuit of justice. They've come after judges, mayors, members of Congress, and our neighbors in our communities. Who's next? Is it you? Representative McIver has her legal rights. They threaten her, and in threatening her, they threaten us. No one is safe once you can be targeted just for asking questions and trying to ensure that the government is following the law. Now, Mr. Hauser, right now our MAGA Republicans are trying to pass a massive spending bill that would increase the national debt by $3.3 trillion and give ICE a staggering $73 billion to build more private for-profit detention facilities. Can you please explain how this massive cash infusion, and especially the $45 billion expansion of immigration detention, is neither wise, strategic, or safe?
Sir, it clearly shows the need for oversight as they expand detention. You're going to outsize the need of what ICE actually needs operationally. Additionally, it will take deportation officers off the streets and now will be in these facilities, so actually making us less safe. Additionally, the idea that you're going to detain 100 to 150,000 people and spend $45 billion or $70 billion to do it, if you took that same money and just put it to fix the broken immigration system now, you could hire thousands of individuals that could be adjudicating cases, immigration judges, resettlement services. Sir, quite frankly, you could give a couple $2 billion to a country to take some of the migrants back themselves and they would go. The idea that you're going to put this into detention and that will fix the system is a bit absurd.
Well, they want the billions.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Political supporters' pocketbooks.
The gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman yields back. Okay, and I recognize the gentleman from the great state of Texas, Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing today on what I believe to be one of the most, probably the most important issue that our country faces right now, which is illegal immigration. Mr. Hauser, I've got a few questions for you. You were the staff for ICE, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What years were you there?
2021 to 2023.
So that was during the Biden administration, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick update here for folks tuning in on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We are focusing in on that top right box, the severe weather coverage in Knoxville. That tornado warning for multiple counties in the Knoxville area should be expired at this point. It was set to expire at 3:45. So we just wanted to reference that for you. But just remind you that we are still alert for this particular system as it is making its way towards the Charlotte area. And we are staying weather aware for the evening here, Tuesday evening, overnight hours, as well as Wednesday morning. Our Weather Impact team will be keeping you updated with the very latest. Let's listen back in full to the House Oversight Committee, listening to threats to ICE operations and testimony regarding that.
Right now, I think you were wrong about that. You also said, quote, the idea that you can turn off the border is just not factual. Do you think that was right or wrong?
Sir, the threats that we're still seeing across the border.
Do you think you were right or wrong about that statement?
What's that, sir?
My question is, were you right or wrong about that statement?
When you turn off the immigration system, sir, yes, you will not see encounters. Yes.
Well, southwestern border encounters are at a 15-year low under President Trump. Another thing that you mentioned, quote, just shutting off the border to asylum seekers is not going to do that, meaning close the border. What I think is going to do that is make it more erratic and sporadic for the sort of large surges of migrants you would see coming across the border. Do you think that was right or wrong?
100% correct. It was correct, sir. We're going to see that over the next couple years.
Border apprehensions are down now because President Trump has secured our border. He's stopped the flow of illegal aliens coming across our border and coming to our border. Do you think that we have a better or worse border situation now than we did under Joe Biden?
Sir, I believe the border is secure.
You believe the border is secure, that's right. But you were wrong about a lot of other things, about what would secure the border, is that right?
No, sir, it's only been 100 days.
You were wrong about what it would take to stop the flow of illegal aliens coming into the United States. You were wrong that secure enforcement that we're seeing under President Trump would stop the flow of illegal aliens. You ought to keep that in mind as you're going to the media and mouthing off about the president.
Can I answer that question?
Let me ask you another question. This is from a New York Times op-ed that you wrote just a month ago.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, quote, federal law enforcement under President Trump is engaged in dangerous political theater. What about President Trump's law enforcement do you think is dangerous political theater? Do you think that
Sir, I think
seizing
setting quotas,
235,000 pounds of
quotas
fentanyl
by
at the
political
border is
appointees in the
dangerous
White
political
House
theater?
is a problem.
Do you think seizing fentanyl at our border is dangerous political theater? Do you know who Gilberto Avila Jara is?
So that's exactly where ICE should have their resources focused. That's exactly where
And
this
we did,
administration
and
is
he was
beginning to turn
arrested
them away
last
from.
month and charged with over 20 sex crimes against minors.
Yes, sir.
These were the kind of people that Joe Biden
2,000
and
CBP
under your
officers off
leadership
the
were
border
coming into
over
our
the next
country.
3 months doesn't make us more safe. Taking HSI agents away from drug interdiction, and
Taking murderers and
trafficking,
rapists
human
off our
smuggling
streets makes the American
doesn't make us
people more safe. It's your testimony that taking murderers and rapists off our streets does not make us more safe?
What I'm saying,
is that what
sir,
you're
is
telling
over,
me?
what we have heard from this administration is over the next few months, there's going to be thousands of law enforcement focused on non-criminal migrants.
We'll see.
instead
You
of
were
the
you were
exact
wrong
same
about a
threats
lot
we
of things.
both
I don't
agree
put a
over.
whole lot of stock into that, candidly, and I don't think the American people do either. Do you support amnesty?
No, sir.
Do you support amnesty for illegal aliens?
No, sir.
In this New York Times article, you wrote, quote, that means that the best solution for public safety is not mass deportations.
No, I
it's giving
support
undocumented,
immigration
I'm
support
speaking
for
right now.
migrants that need
This is my
protection
time,
under
not
our law.
yours. I'm speaking. It's giving undocumented immigrants who have been in the United States for a long time the opportunity to come forward, pay a fine, and gain legal status. That
Yes, sir.
sounds a lot like amnesty to me, doesn't it, to
It's
you?
a process, sir, under the law that could exercise and allow them for
That's
migrants to come out of the shadows and then focus. ICE
That's what
officers on
amnesty
real
is. This
public
is
safety.
a deliberate semantic obfuscation, and you know it, and I know it, and the American people know it as
it's not,
well. Do you think that illegal aliens should be given welfare once they get amnesty?
Sir, that's not my department.
You've got a lot of opinions on a whole lot of different things. You don't have an opinion
Areas
on that?
where I've worked for 20 years, sir. Yes, sir.
And finally, let me ask you, do you think that Biden was successful at stopping illegal immigration?
There was failures at the beginning of the Biden administration to deal with the flow of migrants post-COVID, and then there was failures of implementation of policies across all of the immigration system. That's the same problems we're seeing now. The idea that you can enforce your way out of immigration and the challenges that we see across the Western Hemisphere, it's not going to work.
We had an open border under Biden. The border's secure now. I think that's a successful Trump policy and a failure of the Biden administration. I yield my time back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. With that, stay tuned. You ready?
As ready as I'm
I
going to
don't
be.
know. Okay. I yield to the gentle lady from the great state of Texas, the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Hauser, thank you so much for your service. I do want to make sure that we are clear on your credentials because you actually have them. I have that you were the Assistant Director of Legislative Affairs at Homeland Security, correct?
At one time, yes, ma'am, about 15 years ago.
You were Deputy Chief of Staff at Homeland as well?
Yes, ma'am.
You served as a Senior Advisor to the Commission as Homeland's Custom and Border Protections,
Yes, ma'am.
as well as you recently served as the Chief of Staff for ICE.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you've done a few things.
I'm also a combat veteran. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, thank you for your service in all ways. Here, listen, I have a series of issues of what's going on because I will say that the Republicans were right. Democrats lost on immigration. When you look at all the polling, when you talk to people, they lost on immigration. And frankly, I am concerned that we did not have conversations that went beyond just talking about the humanity, because there are people that literally don't care about humanity, which is why we are able to have this administration doing the things that they're doing. Talking about the fact that border crossings are down 95%, well, I don't know if I can trust that number or not. You know why? Because first of all, they've been going out, they've been firing all of the persons that usually deal with data, science, and facts all over in all agencies. In addition to the fact that even if that is a real number, we don't know if they got to that number just because, well, this is a lawless administration that is consistently in violation of people's constitutional rights, the Constitution in and of itself, court orders. So we can't really explain exactly why and how, even if that is true. And at some point in time, you have to say there is a balancing test. Either we are going to follow the law fully, or we're not at all. And frankly, what I've seen out of this administration is that they don't want to follow the law. But there is something that you said in your opening remarks that really stuck with me. There was a line that I wrote down. You said line cooks and landscapers. Now, I have talked to those that are in construction. I have talked to those that are farmers. I have talked to a lot of people that have said that because of the reckless acts of so many of these.
All right, folks, breaking in here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus with a sad update out of the entertainment world. We're learning Cheers star George Wendt has passed away at the age of 76, of course, known for that role in the long-running sitcom Cheers. We are hearing from various reports that the family is saying that he died early this morning. He passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was at home. However, the official cause of death is not known at this time. Of course, we will expect probably more of that information to come out in the coming days and potentially weeks. However, his family now tonight remembering him as a doting family man. They say he was a well-loved friend and a confidant to all those lucky enough to have known him. And they say that he will be missed forever. He actually starred, by the way, in all 275 episodes of Cheers, and he did get 6 consecutive nominations for the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor for that series. So for folks, once again, just joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Charlotte, WCNC Plus, just getting the word here that George Wendt, Cheers star, has passed away at the age of 76. More on this to come. Let's turn you back now to our live feeds here. Of course, we've been very intently listening in on the House Oversight Committee here. This is Judiciary Committee, listening to questions about ICE operations and any potential threats on those operations.
Oversight also, not only in the immigration space, protects the migrants, but also protects law enforcement and through public safety in making sure they have the resources they need. In my position, over 15 years at the department, I oversaw hundreds of visits by congressional members, advocacy groups, immigration groups, law enforcement groups, and in no way did I ever see the sort of situation that we saw in Delaney Hall, where there was a powder keg driven by the political theater being driven by the White House.
And that's exactly right. And that's actually why I wanted to make sure I talked about the fact that you had credentials and you've actually been in this space. That was not normal. And the idea that they would somehow say that it's their colleagues that were the ones that were driving it, which is why I made sure that I showed video footage of Representative McIver very calmly telling them why she was there. And frankly, it is sad that we do have to go through this kind of political theater because, listen, we all know what it is. That's why they hired everybody from Fox News, because all they're trying to do is put on for a show. This is not the Apprentice show. This is supposed to be about the American people, and I want us to start to refocus our attention on the American people and stop demonizing every daggone person that ends up in custody of ICE, because they are not necessarily demons just because ICE decided to round them up. So thank you for your testimony.
Can I answer that question?
No. The gentle lady yields back. The committee will be in order. I understand your enthusiasm, but we have rules in the way we run the committee for both sides of the aisle. With that being said, I will recognize the gentleman from the great state of Ohio, the chairman of the whole Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mikowski, who are all these people in ICE detention facilities that Democrats went on the street? Who are these folks? Are they all just apple pie asylum-seeking folks, or who else might be in there?
Sir, thank you for the question. First and foremost, they're immigration law violators. They violated the basic laws, immigration laws that are codified by Congress. I'll say it again.
So they broke the law?
Yes, sir. That's first and foremost. They're not a United States citizen.
Any of them violent? In addition to breaking the law, any of them violent people inside these detention centers?
Absolutely, sir.
Any of them gang members?
Absolutely, sir.
Any of them members of MS-13?
Absolutely, sir.
Any of them Trinity Aragua gang members?
Again, sir, yes.
So they're not just all warm and fuzzy folks that the Democrats want out on the street, right? They're bad guys. Some of them are bad guys, really bad guys. Now, some of them are just asylum seekers, but some of them are really bad guys. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, it's fair to say.
Yeah, because you worked in these facilities, is that right?